Good evening, and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting. The public can attend tonight's meeting in person at the George G. Fierro City and County Buildings Council Chambers located at One Tacoma Drive, or watch live on Channel 8 through live streaming on Broomfield's website. The public may also participate in public comment either in person or by calling 855-695-3744 and pressing *3 to be placed in the queue for comment. Please note that if you're calling in for public comment and would like to speak on more than one agenda item, you'll need to press *3 each time to be placed back in the queue for comment. Public comment will be limited to 90 minutes total per item. The first 1 through 15 participants in the queue have 3 minutes to speak. The next 16 through 25 participants in the queue have 2 minutes. And if time remains, the next 26 plus participants have 1.5 minutes to speak. Again, if joining virtually for public comment, the number is 855-695-3744 and press *3 to be placed in the queue. Screeners will ask callers for their first and last name, neighborhood, and the agenda item the caller would like to comment on. Please call several minutes before the agenda item and press *3 to ensure you're in the queue. If joining in person, we'll ask you to come to the podium and state your name and neighborhood for the record. The City Council meeting is called to order. Will the clerk please call the roll? Anderson. Here. Cohen.
Here.
Broom. Here. Hinkle. Jezierski.
Here.
Law Evans.
Here.
Lim. Here. Lindstedt.
Here.
Schaff.
Here.
Tessier. Here. Is Councilmember Hinkle on Zoom? Okay. Awesome, thank you. Are there any Girl Scouts who would like to help lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? You can just stand where you are or go to the podium.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. In an effort to keep order for tonight's meeting, I ask council members to limit their comments to 5 minutes. Abby will be assisting with the timekeeping. Additionally, please remember council's rules of procedure regarding conduct. When possible, council member comments and communication should be limited to 5 minutes per individual per item. If council members are given an opportunity to speak for a second time on an item, they should limit their comments to 2 minutes. And we will plan on a 10-minute break at approximately 8 p.m. We will begin with council's review and approval of this evening's agenda. Council may add or remove items from the consent agenda, or council may revise the order of business for the meeting. Does any member of the council have any comments or questions regarding this evening's agenda? Seeing none, are there any objections to this agenda being approved? Seeing none, this agenda is approved. The only item under petitions and communications this evening is a good one. It's a presentation of the 2022 One Book, One Broomfield Junior Program. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, Council. Sounding a little like a troll. As the night goes on, it'll probably get a little bit worse. Susan Dunn. This is one of our most favorite introductions for our new programs. And we're pretty excited about it. Tell us all about it.
I'm glad to hear that. I'm excited as well. Hi, everyone. As you just heard, my name is Susan Dunn. I am the Children's Collection Development Librarian at the Broomfield Library. And I'm here tonight to tell you about our 2022 One Book, One Broomfield Junior author. This year, we are very excited to tell you that we have chosen Jason Reynolds, who is a poet and a New York Times best-selling author. Jason has written a wide variety of popular books for children's and teens, including Long Way Down, which was named a Newbery Honor Book and received a Los Angeles Times Book Prize, and Look Both Ways, A Tale Told in 10 Blocks, which is a collection of short stories, which was a National Book Award finalist. Reynolds's 2020 collaboration with Ibram X. Kendi called Stamped: Racism, Anti-Racism, and You gained him even more notoriety. So basically, he's a really big deal in the field of children's literature, and we're very lucky to have gotten him just before his popularity really kicked in. Jason is also the current National Ambassador for Young People's Literature. The National Ambassador is selected for his or her contributions to young people's literature, the ability to relate to children and teens, and dedication to fostering children's literacy in all forms. The selection, which is made by the Librarian of Congress, is based upon recommendations from a committee made up of booksellers, librarians, educators, and children's literature experts. Interestingly enough, the 2014-2015 ambassador was Kate DiCamillo, who you will probably remember was our 2021 One Book Junior author. So for One Book Junior this year, we are focusing on Jason's book, Ghost. Ghost is the first of 4 titles that make up the Track series. In Ghost, we meet Castle Cranshaw, AKA Ghost, the nickname he gave himself ever since the night his dad got drunk and threatened Castle and his mom with a gun. Ghost learned to run that night, and you might say he's been running ever since. He's got a load of anger inside that he doesn't know how to deal with, so he tends to take it out on others at school. And then one day, he spots a group of kids his age running around a track in a local park. He takes an instant dislike to the albino kid in the expensive tracksuit, and in his jeans and tennis shoes, Ghost beats the guy in a lap around the track, running on the outside, which gets the attention of the coach. Coach invites Ghost to join the team, and Ghost eventually agrees, but being an elite runner isn't at all what he had expected. Running, and worse, training for running, is much harder than anything Ghost has ever experienced before. And then there's the fact that no matter how fast he is, Ghost just can't seem to run away from trouble. Ultimately, he must come to terms with what he's running from and also decide where he's running to. In the first book in the series, we meet 3 of Ghost's teammates, Sunny, Patina, and Lou. And after the first book, Reynolds goes on to write 3 more books, one about each of those characters. So we hope that kids will start with Ghost, and then they'll be motivated to read the rest of the books as well. The library will be distributing paperback copies of Ghost at outreach events in the Broomfield community beginning in 2022. We are also once again making circulating book club kits for checkout. This spring, we'll be featuring Ghost in our March Junior Book Club meeting, and we're partnering with the Parks and Recreation Department to do a 3-week running clinic for youth. Everyone who registers will get a copy of the book and a personalized invitation to Jason's event. I brought a copy of the book for each of you tonight, and I hope that you will enjoy reading it, and then you will pass it on to a young person in your life. If anybody has any questions about One Book, One Broomfield Junior, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the book.
You're welcome. We've got the others at the library if you want to read the rest of the series as well.
Wonderful. We'll now proceed with public comment. We'll start with in-person public comment. If there's anyone who'd like to be heard, please come to the podium, state your name and neighborhood, and limit your comments to 3 minutes.
Hi, I am Christy Young, and I brought my Girl Scout troop with me here tonight. My address is 780 Emerald, and I've got Abby Lind here with me and Riley Cronin and her mom. And we are learning their inside government badge, and that's one of the pieces is to visit city council and to see how it works. In about a week and a half, we're going to do a tour of the city building, get the inside look. And they're supposed to be taking notes, and we'll be here for about an hour, so y'all behave, all right? Yeah. So it's great to be here, and they also need to see me up here on the podium presenting and not losing my mind. So that when I ask them to do this and ask you for something, they know how. You may recognize Abby from a couple of years ago. She was in here Daisy uniform asking for better dog stations, and it blew Mayor Aaron's away. So, we're here tonight just so we can learn more about government. Thank you.
Thank you, Christy. And this is the public comment period on the one book, one growth.
I'm sorry.
You are totally allowed. That was great.
I'm sorry.
You're flexible. Is there anyone else that would like to comment on the ghost book? I don't see anyone online. Next is council member comments. Any council members? Councilmember Shaq.
Thank you, Mayor. So I love this program. I think that this is one of the truly cool programs that Broomfield does. I'm one of the council representatives on our One Book, One Broomfield adult version program. And I am so excited about this book and this author. I think that you all knocked it out of the park with this one. I'm curious, as I did some research on this author and on this book, I wasn't quite sure what grades that this book was going to be targeted toward, and what other books, that he has, and kind of what the span of best suited audience is going to be for our youth and our young adults.
Jason writes for middle schoolers and high schoolers as well as kids. And I would say this book is more tween and middle grade. One of the things I'm trying to do with One Book is the first year we had it, One Book Junior. The first year was a picture book author. And then last year, Kate DiCamillo was more of an elementary grade author. And then we're trying to do a tween author. And then next year, we'll go back to a picture book author again so that we can give all ages of kids a chance to participate in a book at their level. And somebody at the library commented the other day, the kids that started out reading Mac Barnett's book the first year and then moved to Kate's book now may be ready for Ghost this coming year.
Yeah, I think that's very true. Well, thanks for that. One of the things that I found on his website is he talked about kids and reading, which I thought was, which struck me very much because I kind of fall into this. And this is what he says. Here's what I know. I know there are a lot of young people who hate reading, which I fall into that category. I know there are many of these book haters are boys, which is also me as a young kid. I know many of these book hating boys don't actually hate books, they hate boredom. If you're reading this and you happen to be one of these boys, first of all, you're reading this, so my master plan is already working. And second of all, know that I feel you, I really do, because even though I am a writer, I hate reading boring books too. And I think that that's so true, and that's why I'm so excited about this book, because I don't think this is going to be a boring book. I don't think that from what I've seen that he writes boring books, so I think that this is going to be a great offer for our young adults. So thank you to you and your staff.
Thank you. Any other council member comments? All right, well, thank you very much for being with us tonight. We'll move to general public comment next. Typically, this is an opportunity for the public to comment on matters other than the items already listed on this evening's agenda. But today I received some requests from a few council members to allow public comment on item 11C, which is the third quarter oil and gas and air quality monitoring executive summary during general public comment, as some constituents wanted to provide comment but were unable to stay through the agenda when this item is scheduled to be heard. To accommodate this request, we'll make an exception this evening and take public comment on items not on this evening's agenda, as well as item 11C during this portion. The public will also be able to comment on item 11C during council's review of the item later this evening. As mentioned earlier, the public may comment both in person or via phone. If you're joining via phone and want to be placed in the queue for comment, please call 855-695-3744 and press *3. If you're joining in person, please line up behind the podium. I'm juggling a Zoom too. Hold on one second. I think we do have someone in the queue for public comment. We have a couple. So we'll go first to Pam Wana. You have 3 minutes, Pam. Pam, are you there? Are you there, Jake?
Yeah, we have one screener screening someone, so Tia isn't able to bring her live quite yet.
Okay. I see that. I see that going on.
Yeah.
Thanks for your patience. Nobody here wants to comment in the meantime? All right, we're ready for Pam Lonick.
Yes, hello?
Yep, we hear you.
Oh, okay, good. I'm sorry I'm not there in public. Good evening, council members and honorable mayor. My name is Pam Lonick and I live at 2251 West 154th Place, Broomfield, 80023. And I live in the direct impact zone of the Northwest A and Northwest B pad. First, I just wanted to say that most of the people sitting on this new council never supported the location of the wells, the oil and gas wells, and many of you have been staunch advocates to protect people, even those in Adams County. But with this in mind, I would like to just know about the following. Number one is what triggers a code red for ADCO residents? And this has been tested, and has this been tested to the Broomfield code red? Please keep in mind that ADCO residents could not sign up for Broomfield code red because we live in ADCO. What incident would trigger a reverse 911? And I want to know why we were not alerted about the highly elevated benzene spikes that occurred almost a month ago. Please bear in mind that we are rightly concerned in our neighborhood, particularly due to the recent fire on 3 separate oil separators operated by Extraction Loveland. How do I find out how to be contacted during an emergency situation and what constitutes an emergency situation? Please be advised that I have attended many meetings prior to any of these wells being drilled, and I'm still scared and very concerned about what is happening in my community. And I just want to know who I can contact to get these answers. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Kathy Bogard. Kathy, you have 3 minutes.
Hello,
Hello.
this is Kathy. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
So I'm also calling in on the oil and gas drilling, the fracking that's going on right now, being really close to it. And what I am seeking is to get clarification and transparency from Broomfield on which one of the fracking chemicals, and I'm including fracking, coil tubing, flowback, and production, kind of lumping them all together, are harmful to health and are also airborne. So I wanted to get that information clarified. And then I wanted to find out from someone at Broomfield with complete transparency, which one of those are being monitored in the AQM or will be monitored in the AQM, and then the levels that they'll be monitored at. And then also the health standards that are required for those chemicals to be met so that we can follow that information. And that's it. Thank you. And congratulations to everyone.
Thank you.
I'm sorry?
I said thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other public comment? All right, moving on. Council, community, and event updates are next. Before asking for updates from council this evening, I want to remind the community that during the next council meeting on Tuesday, November 16th, we will be celebrating both the incoming and outgoing council members, including the swearing-in ceremony for the newly elected or re-elected. There will be a brief reception, and we invite you all to join us. Does any member of council have any updates this evening? Councilmember Tessier?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So this Saturday, Broomfield Fish is doing their annual turkey drive, Saturday, November 13th from noon to 2 p.m. and it'll be at Fish. And what we've seen in the past is people will either go to Whole Foods or King Soopers and buy like 10 turkeys and then they'll deliver them to Broomfield Fish. This year we plan on having probably a record-breaking year due to the pandemic, with people still struggling getting back to work. And so if you are so inclined and feel that fish is on your radar to create some meals for those who may not be able to have your traditional Thanksgiving otherwise, we sure do appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Shah?
Thank you, Mayor. So this last week, I got the honor, privilege to be included in a panel on the Colorado Business Council on the Committee on the Arts. And what this does is they use the information from the FCFD grant reports to present the economic benefits of the arts in the metro area. And one of the things that we came off of is they presented the data for 2019 to 2020. 2019 was the record year in the Denver metro area in terms of economic output, in terms of dollars raised by these nonprofits, in terms of audiences that came. And then, of course, we hit a pandemic, which basically knocked all of that down. 2020 was one of the worst years that we've ever seen. Basically, in 1 year, less than 1 year, we lost a decade of growth in our arts and culture sector here in the Denver metro area. They presented a lot of other great pieces of information. All of them from 2019 were great statistics. In 2020 were pretty awful statistics to have to see. And the only thing that was the highlight is that the generous contributions of this community increased actually from 2019 to 2020. So that was the one positive, is that people still do care about the arts and culture in our communities and see the impacts there. So one of the things that they offered was to come and present during our petitions and communication section for one of our meetings, and potentially we can have them come and present all of that information. So if council's interested in that, I'll make sure to follow up with them and have them come and do that. So sounds like that would be good. So I'll communicate that. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other council member updates? All right, moving on. Council's consideration of the consent agenda is next. We will review this evening's consent agenda in 3 parts, as item 7F needs approval by the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority, and item 7G is a request for an executive session and requires an individual motion. Following the clerk's reading of consent agenda items 7A through 7E, we will ask for public comment. Will the clerk please read agenda items 7A through 7E by title?
7A, approval of minutes from regular meeting of October 26, 2021. 7B, resolution number 2021-188, authorizing an agreement between the city and county of Broomfield and ACL Inc. for the design of the US 287 120th Avenue Side Path Infill and Transit Improvements Project. 7C, resolution number 2021-190, authorizing and approving an agreement by and between the city and county of Broomfield and White Sands Water Engineers, Inc. for the provision of consulting services related to engineering and water rights matters. 7D, resolution number 2021-191, approving the renewal of an intergovernmental agreement with Adams County for community corrections program services through 2024 and appointing Broomfield representatives to the Community Corrections Board. 7E, ordinance number 2167, rezoning certain land located at 12,000 Thompson Court, 12015 Thompson Court, 12020 Thompson Court, and 2680 West 120th Avenue, north of Interlochen Loop, within the city and county of Broomfield, from general business B2 to planned unit development. Ordinance number 2168, vacating a 39.5 foot public right of way within the 12,000 Wadsworth subdivision.
Thank you. We'll now proceed with public comment. Does any member of the public have any comments on these agenda items? I'm not seeing any online. We'll start, next is the council member comments on these agenda items. Do any council members have any comments? All right, is there a motion that the recommendations contained in the staff report for agenda items 7A through 7E be approved? Councilmember Shao?
So moved.
Second? Can I have a second? Councilmember Lloyd, and is there any discussion? Since we have a council member attending remotely, we're going to do a roll call vote. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Anderson,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Groom,
Yes.
Hinkle,
Yes.
Jezerski.
Yes.
Law Evans.
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Winstead,
Yes.
Shack,
Yes.
Tessier.
That passes unanimously. The second part of the consent agenda this evening is Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority's consideration of item 7F. The meeting of the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority is called to order. I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Anderson. Here. Cohen.
Here.
Groom. Here. Hinkle.
Here.
Jezerski.
Here.
Law Evans.
Here.
Lamb. Here. Winstead.
Here.
Mitchell. Nielsen. Shack,
Here.
Tessier.
Thank you. Quorum is present. Following the clerk's reading of consent agenda item 7F, we will ask for public comment. Will the clerk please read agenda item 7F by title?
7F Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority minutes from October 12, 2021 and October 26, 2021.
Thank you. We'll now proceed with public comment. Does any member of the public have comments on this agenda item? Nope. Does any member of the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority have comments on this agenda item? Still no. Is there a motion that the recommendations contained in the staff report for agenda item 7F be approved? Councilmember Shaw?
Thank you, Mayor. I move that Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority minutes of October 12, 2021 and October 26, 2021 be approved.
Thank you. Is there a second? Second. Thank you, Councilmember Law Evans. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Cohen,
Yes.
Groom,
Yes.
Hinkle,
Yes.
Jezerski,
Yes.
Law Evans,
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Winstead,
Yes.
Shack,
Yes.
Tessier.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Thank you. That was unanimous too. The final item under consent agenda for council's consideration this evening is a request for an executive session relating to ongoing negotiations regarding extraction of oil and gas operations. If approved, council will move into an executive session following tonight's council meeting. Following the clerk's reading of consent agenda item 7G, we will ask for public comment. Will the clerk please read agenda item 7G by title?
7G, request for executive session related to ongoing negotiations regarding extraction oil and gas Inc.'s operation.
Thank you. We'll now proceed with public comment. Does any member of the public have comments on this agenda item? Does any member of council have any comment? Will the city and county attorney please read the motion?
Thank you, Mayor. That an executive session regarding ongoing legal advice and negotiations regarding extraction oil and gas Inc.'s operations be held on November 9th, 2021, following council's regular meeting as permitted by CRS 24-6-402 sub 4 B and E.
Thank you. Is there a motion, Councilmember Shaw?
So moved.
Is there a second, Councilmember Law Evans? Thank you. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Groom,
Yes.
Hinkle,
I think she unmuted. Can you just say that again, Councilmember Hangle?
Yes.
Thank you.
Jezerski,
Yes.
Law Evans,
Yes.
Lamb,
Yes.
Winstead,
Yes.
Shack,
Yes.
Tessier. Anderson,
Yes.
Cohen.
Yes.
That passes unanimously. We have one item for the Board of Social Services consideration this evening. Proposed resolution number 2021-189-BSS, adopting the Chafee Foster Care Independence Program for October 1st, 2021 to September 30th, 2022. The meeting of the Board of Social Services is called to order. I'll ask the clerk to call the roll.
Anderson,
Here.
Cohen,
Here.
Groom,
Here.
Hinkle,
Here.
Jezerski.
Here.
Evans.
Here.
Lamb. Here. Lindstedt.
Here.
Sharp.
Here.
Messier.
Thank you. A quorum is present. Board members have a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor. Molly Judson, Manager of Adult Children Family Services, will walk us through this item. Ms. Judson.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and esteemed council members. I'm here tonight to walk us very quickly through the Chafee Foster Care Independence Program renewal for this upcoming fiscal year. The Chafee program is focused on providing supportive services and financial support to children and youth who are at risk or have aged out of the foster care system. And so this funding is used for things such as rental assistance, supportive housing, job assistance, education assistance, that kind of thing. So we have an estimate of the budget for this upcoming fiscal year, which is $10,713. This is 100% state funding. There's no county match. And so that is just an estimate. We haven't gotten the final amount yet from the state. But if this is approved this evening, we will be good to move forward with our plan and receive that funding from the state for these supportive services. I'm also here tonight with Rachel Higgins, who is our Chafee coordinator. And so if there's any additional questions I can't answer, I might call on her, but I think it's pretty straightforward. So I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Thank you very much, Ms. Judson. We'll now proceed with public comments. We'll start with in-person public comment. If there's anyone who'd like to be heard, please come to the podium and state your name and neighborhood for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes. Not seeing any online. Questions from the board are next. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Board member Tatiana.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is a phenomenal program, and thank you for bringing it forward. I'm really excited about this and excited about the partnerships that are just so necessary. I do have a few questions, and this was just coming up for me because so at the Chafee program, what are the youth part of that board? What kind of voice do they have when these decisions are being made?
So there are youth advisory boards that we participate in. We in Broomfield don't have a specific youth advisory board because our population is frankly pretty small for this program. We just don't have a lot of kids, and thankfully actually that are aging out of foster care. And so we do connect our youth, however, with Boulder, with Adams County, with other opportunities to participate in these conversations regionally. And statewide, there are definitely conversations that happen that youth voice is very prevalent. There's a former foster youth advocacy group through the Rocky Mountain Children's Law Center that's extremely active legislatively, and they were actually responsible for the passing of the sibling rights bill for sibling rights for children in foster care. So there are definitely opportunities for youth participation.
That's awesome to hear, and I'm really grateful for that. And I know that Broomfield has the Anchor House, and just didn't know if there are, anything down the road, and if I'll stop there and then I'll ask my last question.
There's no plans currently that I'm aware of in the community to expand past Anchor House. However, we are in close collaboration with them. Rachel will provide Chafee support to any youth who do move into our community. We've been in contact with the coordinators there and ensuring they're connected to Broomfield Fish, to our self-sufficiency, our workforce center. So we're definitely working with them. And the hope would be, I think, that this could become a model for how we could support foster youth into the future.
That's awesome. And I know that you serve 8 to 10, and is there a need beyond that right now in Broomfield?
For our Broomfield youth, no. However, that population may increase for 2 reasons. Number one, because we have youth moving into the Anchor House that may need Chafee support as they move into our community. And 2, we have the Foster Youth in Transition program. That's a newer program, and we're still trying to figure out all of the logistics. But essentially, foster youth who even spent a day in care after the age of 16 are eligible to come back and receive supportive services if on a voluntary basis after the age of 18. And so we may see an increase in our population from that, but I think we do a really excellent job of ensuring that when our kids need care, they have permanent connections, they have a large network, and that they really are set up for success. And so we really focus on that front end, that preventative end, to try to keep kids from, becoming disconnected after they age out.
Awesome. And I didn't know if any of the, CDC or the PYD program would be recruiting any of these youth for their voice for Broomfield. And it's just a suggestion and another partnership that I think to bring their voices to the forefront.
Absolutely. And again, we're through our collaborative management program, we're in very close connection and contact with the CTC, with Jen McIntyre and her whole program. So if there's any opportunities there to connect, Rachel would have those connections set up so that the youth could participate. Absolutely.
Awesome. I feel like, I don't know. Woohoo! This is amazing. Thank you so much.
Great.
Any other board member comments? Thank you very much, Ms. Judkins, for the update. And we'll move on. Seeing there's no further business before the Board of Social Services, although we have to pass that down. I totally skipped over that, sorry. Next is the board's consideration of proposing the update. Resolution number 2021-189-BSS. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution number 2021-189-BSS by title?
Resolution number 2021-189-BSS, adopting the Chafee Foster Care Independence Program Plan for the funding cycle of October 1st, 2021 to September 30th, 2022 for the city and county of Broomfield, and authorizing the plan to be submitted to the Colorado Department of Human Services.
Thank you. Is there a motion, Councilmember Tessier?
I move that resolution number 2021-189-BSS be adopted.
Thank you. Is there a second, Councilmember Lim?
Second.
Thank you. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Hinkle.
Yes.
Dzierski.
Yes.
Law Evans.
Yes.
Lim.
Yes.
Lindstedt.
Yes.
Schaefer. Schaaf. Sorry. I can't read tonight. Sorry.
Yes.
Tessier.
Yes.
Anderson.
Yes.
Cohen.
Yes.
Groom.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes unanimously. Seeing there's no further business before the Board of Social Services, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you all. This evening, we have the COVID-19 update for the Board of Health's review. The meeting of the Board of Health is called to order. I'll ask the clerk to call the roll for the Board of Health.
Anderson.
Here.
Cohen.
Here.
Groom.
Here.
Hinkle.
Here.
Dzierski.
Here.
Law Evans.
Here.
Lim.
Here.
Lindstedt.
Here.
Schaaf.
Here.
Tessier.
Here.
We have a quorum. All the boards are here. Board members have a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Unfortunately, our director, Jason Bowling, is also under the weather. Continues to go around. But our deputy director, Deb. I'm on the decline. I'm so sorry. Generally, Deb always gives the background updates anyway. Ms. Fettersville, forgive me.
No worries. Thank you, Manager Hoffman, and good evening, everyone. So as you may be aware, 2 times a month on Mondays, the Broomfield Public Health and Environment Department provides a COVID-19 update and Q&A session for our mayor and council members, and those sessions are recorded and posted on broomfield.org on the council page. So we did have one of those sessions yesterday, and you can access the full presentation there. So tonight, I'm just going to share some of the highlights from that more in-depth presentation. So a couple things to cover. First, infections and hospitalizations in Colorado have increased for the past 2 months. And so locally, this holds true. We've seen our cases jumped up between August and September, and then they remain steady throughout September, October, and as we're heading into November across all of our age groups. So while we expect to continue to see some level of transmission circulating in the community, the concern at the present time is that our hospital capacity is very, very stressed. So if Colorado remains on this trajectory, we expect that the demand for COVID-19 beds will increase and continue to increase throughout November and potentially peak in December. Here locally in the North Central Hospital region, we have experienced 95% of ICU beds are currently occupied. So in addition to COVID cases driving this pressure on our hospital systems, this is coming at a time when hospitals are also experiencing rising cases due to other respiratory illnesses, facing staffing challenges that are also contributing to this stress. I think it is worth noting, however, that amongst those nearly 1,500 COVID cases that are currently hospitalized, 79% of those individuals are not vaccinated. Couple things to note. Broomfield is not driving statewide or regional hospitalizations. In fact, we have one of the lowest hospitalization rates in the state. But obviously the stress on the hospital system does in fact impact us. Earlier today, the state activated the hospital crisis standards of care. And what that does is gives our hospital systems some flexibility in terms of their approach to patient care and how they deploy their healthcare workforce. So this could include things like cross-training healthcare staff, utilizing non-healthcare staff to provide support functions, and a number of other measures. Additionally, we're seeing that hospitals are delaying elective surgeries and procedures, having a greater need to transfer patients from one facility to the next. And across the board, residents are likely increasing delays in being able to access care. So while this is certainly concerning, I think on a positive note, there is and continues to be some tools that we have access to address this, in addition to what the state is doing to provide more flexibility to the hospitals, and that is continuing to really focus on increasing the number of individuals that are vaccinated. That includes both our pediatric population, ages 5 to 11, that just became eligible for vaccines, as well as booster doses in our already vaccinated population, and finally encouraging individuals that have not yet become vaccinated to go ahead and initiate that process. So while there's no guarantee that a vaccine will prevent you from becoming infected, we continue to have very strong data that the vaccine significantly reduces the chances that you'll get seriously ill or die from COVID. And so the good news is that we do have vaccine widely available, like I said, for not only our pediatric population, but for individuals seeking initial or booster doses. And so here locally, the Public Health Department is focused really on continuing to make access available to our residents. We're working very, very closely with our community partners to coordinate appointments with local medical providers. Individuals can access vaccine through local retail pharmacies. We are working with the state and local partners to coordinate pop-up clinics at our local nonprofits, our schools, as well as to coordinate having the mobile vaccine bus at community events and various locations throughout Broomfield throughout this month, next, and as long as we deem necessary. So the best way to find this information and to any clinics that are open to the public, to get links to how to make appointments, is on our website at broomfield.org/COVID vaccine. And that will continue to be our primary focus within this response. So finally, I'll share that this past Friday, the State Health Department and the Metro Denver Partnership for Health issued a public health advisory. And this was really in response to those rising COVID cases and the stress on the hospital system that I mentioned earlier. And it was an effort really just to capture the attention of the public, to really remain vigilant and remind everyone that we do have tools in our toolbox and we need to continue using them. So with that reminder, that concludes my update, and I'm available for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Fetterfield. We'll now proceed with public comment. Does any member of the public have any comments on this agenda item? Please step up to the podium, state your name and neighborhood for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Name is Richard Erickson, Ward 4. This morning, I'm a retired physician, and I was reviewing the COVID states on the World Odometer. I want you to remember this number 1476. It's tragedy that this ever had to happen, but I don't want to go into whether we function, gain of function, NIH. This never should have happened. There was 1476 deaths per million population in the state of Colorado. It's also 1476, which is an identical number in Sweden. Now, Sweden had a much different policy than us. They had limited mask requirements. They maintained their schools open. Their restaurants function well. They did limit public gatherings slightly, but overall, their economy came through this in excellent condition. And we have the same outcome, terrible outcome, as they have. And I think we need to start thinking about the collateral damage. Schools in Boulder County and also in Adams County can't staff. There's a teacher shortage and they're going to 4-day schools. Hospital staff is exhausted with our policy. One of the reasons for shortages of hospital beds is that we've lost over 300 ICU beds in Colorado. That if you look at the hospitalizations from last year, there were about 1,000 at the peak. This year it's about 700, 600 at the peak, and we're having a shortage, and that's because healthcare staff is worn out by the policy. There's been businesses in Broomfield that have been bankrupt. A lot of businesses can't get workers now because people are terrified in our society. It's terrible. I see people wearing masks out in open space. They're not around anyone, no risk at all. I see people driving around in Broomfield where they're on their bicycles all the time. They're wearing masks. So the question is, we've got to weigh things. There's negative effects, what you all do, including fear, and we haven't had any better results than a country like Sweden. So I would like this council to ask more questions from our public health department. Ask them what the justification is. Ask them what the proof is. If you believe science is real, then do real science, and real science has a basis in skepticism. Thank you very much, Mayor.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? Well, next we'll go to comments from the board. Any board members have any comments or questions? Councilmember, Board Member Tessier.
Thank you. I just have one quick comment, and I really appreciate all of the pop-up clinics that have been happening. Getting those small numbers of people vaccinated at a time seems to be, like, what is it, cents make dollars, and so you here and there make dozens and dozens, and it's really, I wanted to thank you and your team for partnering with so many of the partners to make that happen. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Any other board member questions, comments? Board Member Lynn?
Yes, I was wondering if public health had this information in other countries, so I don't know. What is the vaccination rate of Sweden compared to the United States?
Unfortunately, I don't know that off the top of my head. I'm sorry, but happy to look at it.
Okay. It might be relevant to that previous comment. That's why I wondered. The state on Friday put out modeling that projected that 1,393 hospitalizations would peak at the end of November. But yet it only took 3 days for us to reach that number. So what is the state saying at this point in time about the projection for the rest of November and what we as a population can do to make sure it doesn't go any higher than it's already peaked already?
Sure. So I think a couple things there. One is, as you noted, we're looking at modeling data every week. And so based on what's happening, the modeling will be revisited. And initially it was looking that the peak was coming in December. And I think that's still what the modeling is showing, but perhaps that peak is going to be even higher than initially projected. So we'll continue to monitor that. And in terms of what the state is doing, there's a couple of things. I think they are working actively with the health systems to try to look at mechanisms for increasing the number of available beds. And that could be through, outsourcing healthcare providers from other states that may be available to provide additional support. So there may be facilities that have beds, but as we've been saying, may not have the staff to provide the care. And so looking at any potential enhancements in that area, as well as if there are any other facilities that could lend support. Another thing that I didn't mention, but that has been a major focus of the state, and also we've been working on this locally with our healthcare providers, is the promotion of monoclonal antibody treatment, so that once individuals are infected with COVID, and if they are at risk of serious illness, making sure that they are aware and being referred to places where they can receive this monoclonal antibody infusions, which can prevent the illness from becoming more serious and requiring hospitalization. I think certainly as we speak, there's other antiviral treatments that are in clinical trials that could be coming online later this month and into December and subsequent months that will also provide options for treatment that hopefully can then lessen the severity and the need for hospitalization. So it'll be a multifaceted approach. And then finally, as we spoke of earlier, just continuing to look at all the ways that we can make vaccines accessible, trying to remove whatever barriers we can so that more and more individuals are able to seek that as an additional step towards preventing those hospitalizations.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other board member questions? Don't see any. Well, thank you very much, Ms. Benestrel. Seeing no further business before the Board of Health, the meeting is adjourned. Next is the Broomfield Housing Authority's consideration of an agreement relating to the Crosswinds at Arista multifamily project. Items 11A and 15A are related to the same topic and will be reviewed concurrently this evening by the Broomfield Housing Authority, City Council, and the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority. The meeting of the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority was called to order earlier this evening. I'll now convene the Broomfield Housing Authority. The meeting of the Broomfield Housing Authority is called to order. I'll ask the clerk to call the roll for the Broomfield Housing Authority.
Anderson. Here. Cohen.
Here.
Broom.
Here.
Hinkle.
Here.
Jaworski.
Here.
Law Evans.
Here.
Lim.
Here.
Lindstedt.
Here.
Jeff.
Here.
Tessier. Yeah.
Thank you. A quorum is present. We'll now proceed with the review and public hearing of items 10A, 11A, and 15A. We will follow the city's standard public hearing procedures. First, staff will present a summary of the proposal. Next, we'll have the applicant's presentation if applicable. Then we'll ask for public comment, and finally, comments from the applicant, and then questions from the city council and/or board and authority members. Council and the board members have a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to cover.
Thank you, Mayor. Anna Bertonzetti, Director of Planning, and Jeff Romine, Director of Development and Finance, is also in the audience and will be supporting Ms. Bertonzetti as she moves through this. Applicants are also here for their presentation, their brief presentation, and council comments and questions. Ms. Brzezzi.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, board members. Anna Brzezzi, Planning Director. We could have the next slide, please. So Gorman and Company has submitted an application for a site development plan with an urban renewal site plan for a proposed 159 unit apartment complex. One of these units will be utilized for the on-site property manager, with the remaining units all operate at 30 to 80% of the area median income. These would be 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units that are proposed. The proposed development is located in the Arista development. The property is about 6.24 acres in size and is immediately east of Wadsworth Parkway and south of Uptown Avenue. Next slide, please. The property is designated as transit-oriented development, and the proposed use as a multifamily development is consistent with this designation. Next slide, please. The property is zoned planned unit development PUD within the Arista PUD planned area. And the multifamily residential is a permitted use for this area which is called the mixed use perimeter planning area of the PUD. And I should say that the PUD's official name is Broomfield Urban Transit Village, rather than Arista. There are 4 buildings as part of this, and each is about 3 stories in height. Parking is interior to the site, with the building screening the views of the parking, which is consistent with the PUD plan's requirements. The lot will have 2 ingress-egress points from Destination Drive and will offer 275 spaces, as well as 7 on-street parking spaces adjacent to the site, which is allowed in Arista. The proposal includes an on-site parking ratio that's about 1.8 spaces per unit, and that's consistent with what we see in Arista for parking requirements, and we believe that this is adequate to serve the development. In terms of landscaping and open area, the site exceeds the minimum requirement of 40% by providing an open area coverage of 46%. On-site amenities include 2 playgrounds, a dog park, as well as some gathering areas. There is an improvement agreement, which is being processed concurrently with the site development plan, and this outlines the responsibilities of the developer with respect to the sewer outfall fees and outlines timing of the installation of public improvements, such as the sidewalk and pedestrian connections. Next slide, please. The buildings are approximately 40 feet in height, which is less than the maximum allowed for this area of 85 feet per the PUD. They have a mix of stucco, stone, and siding materials, and the main entrances are highlighted with canopy overhangs. Next slide, please. Along with the site development plan and urban renewal site plan, there are a number of related agreements that are also included as part of this item. First, the Housing Authority will consider an agreement with Gorman Company for the Housing Authority to be a participant in this project. Second, the MOU, or Memorandum of Understanding, will be considered by council. This MOU will ensure the affordability of the project moving forward and provide some additional waivers of permit and use taxes. This will help to further the affordability of the project. And finally, Resolution 2021-192 would authorize a loan as is also referenced and detailed in the MOU. Next slide, please. The applicant is requesting 2 variances as part of the site development plan urban renewal site plan. The first is a setback reduction along Uptown Avenue, where a portion of the building encroaches into a 20-foot setback by about 10 feet. To offset the impact, the developer is proposing enhancing the landscaping along that street. So there's a mixture of deciduous evergreen trees, as well as shrubs and ornamental grasses in that area. The second variance is for signage identification. The PUD plan doesn't list building identification signs or marquee signs as a sign classification for residential uses. So the applicant is proposing signage at all 4 buildings, and a variance is requested. The proposed signage adds interest and calls attention to the entryways for each of the buildings. And the proposed signage type is consistent with the urban aesthetic that we find in Arista. Next slide, please. The Land Use Review Commission reviewed the site plan request on October 11th of this year and voted 5-0 to recommend approval with no conditions. The applicant had held a neighborhood meeting on the proposal in February. The consultants and city staff were the only ones in attendance. Noticing requirements have been met per the municipal code, and staff has not identified any key issues with this proposal. That concludes my presentation, and as mentioned, the applicant also has a presentation as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Will the applicant representative?
So, will the applicant's representative please identify themselves for the record prior to beginning their brief presentation?
Good evening, my name is Lauren Shevitz. My address is 1060 Bannock Street, Suite 305 in Denver, Colorado. I am the Director of Development for Gorman and Company. Tonight here, we also have our consultant team, Norris Design, on planning and entitlements and landscape architecture. Gorman and Company and Workshop 8 on the architecture side, and Ware Malcolm here for civil engineer. Gorman and Company is currently under contract to purchase the land in Arista from the State of Colorado Land Board. At the end of November, we were selected through a competitive process to purchase the land specifically for the purposes of building affordable housing. We are really excited about the steps that Broomfield is taking to increase affordable housing within the community, and we're looking forward to a long-term partnership here. Next slide, please. Just a quick background on Gorman and Company. We are a 35-year-old real estate development firm focused on affordable and workforce housing development. We started our Colorado market in 2014, and since then we have either broken ground or completed nearly 1,000 apartment units, affordable or workforce housing. Our developments are largely in the urban Denver metro area, but we also have developments in the mountain resort communities. We take pride in our products that we build, and we are long-term owner operators. Our developments focus on affordable housing, typically 30 to 60% of the area median income, and workforce housing, which is typically 80 to 100% of the area median income. We are a vertically integrated company on this project. Development, architecture, and property management all are going to be in-house. So I will pass it along to Leanne with Norris Design. Thank you.
Good evening, Leanne Blair with Norris Design, 1101 Bannock Street, Denver. Thank you, Anna, Mayor, council members, and staff for your time this evening. Anna provided a very, very thorough overview, so I'll do my best not to repeat the information that she shared, but there's a few things that do warrant some repeating. So just to recap, it's 159 units for rent, affordable, 30 to 80% AMI. And as Anna mentioned, the residential amenities include indoor community spaces, secure bike parking, both indoor and out, fenced dog area, dog park, 2 play areas, and then community gathering spaces, as well as an accessible trail up to Wadsworth to the RTD stop. The development is also planned to be built in single phase. Next slide, please. I'll let you, since I forgot to say next slide. No, next slide. So sustainability is a very important aspect to this project. There are 4 EV capable spaces that will be provided up front, with an additional 24 spaces for future charging infrastructure installation. This community will achieve a National Green Build Standard certification at the bronze level, and that is predicated on a couple factors. The first is that the location is an infill lot that provides high density housing in proximity to both transit and community resources. The second category is through high performance of energy, resource, and water efficiency categories, with high quality installation, efficiencies in the unit plans, as well as resource conserving fixtures, appliances, and HVAC systems. And then lastly, through indoor environmental quality, through the use of low VOC products, ventilation inspections, protections from construction debris, and installation of radon systems for mitigation there. Next slide, please. This is a rendering capturing the views into the site from the corner of Uptown Avenue and Destination Drive, looking west. Next slide, please. This is a similar view, but just from a bird's eye perspective. The architectural character is complementary to what we see at Arista already. Buildings are a color palette of neutrals and muted tones with careful additions of subtle color accent walls. The exterior is a mix of stone, stucco, and siding materials. And the corners and building entries are emphasized through distinct architectural elements as well as our signage. Next slide, please. This final image is a view from the sidewalk from Uptown Avenue up near the Wadsworth corner, elevated looking down into our site. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to hand it back over to Lauren. Thank you very much.
I'm back. Lauren Shevitz with Gorman and Company, 1060 Bannock Street, Denver, Colorado. As Leah mentioned, the property will be developed to serve individuals and families earning 30 to 80% of the area median income. Gorman has been awarded low-income housing tax credits by the Colorado Housing and Finance Agency, or Authority, sorry. We have also been awarded a loan fund from the state of Colorado for the development of this project. So in addition to the site development plan approval this evening, Gorman is requesting from Broomfield to help support this project financially in the form of a loan and fee waivers. We're also requesting that the Housing Authority join the ownership of the property to help provide property and sales tax exemption. We really appreciate your review of this request this evening, and thank you very much.
Thank you. Does that conclude the presentation?
That concludes the applicant's presentation. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We will now proceed with public comment. Does any member of the public have comments on this agenda item? If so, step up to the podium. I'm not seeing any online. Questions from the board and council are next. Are there any comments or questions from the board? Board Member Tessier.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, this is so exciting to have. And for full transparency, I do work at Broomfield Fish as a housing manager. And I got to house 3 different families today because of our first affordable housing over at Academy Place is coming. And I cannot tell you the joy and the excitement. I know Broomfield was a little bit on the slower side getting here, but man, we are making a name for ourselves. And I am so blessed to be a part of this community and to have these opportunities like this. I just have to say, one 7-year-old was just like, oh my goodness. I mean, and he said this to me, now my mommy can sleep at night. Right? I know, exactly. And so this is what you're providing for our community. Broomfield was a community that was welcome to everyone. And we are making it that again. And because of organizations like yourself. And I can't thank you enough for providing those units. 159 units will go a long way in Broomfield to reach some of our goals. Not far enough. And it's really great to see our values coming in as well as not that our financial values aren't important, because they are, and also some of our other values that we bring forth. Leanne, it was great to see you today, my last meeting. And I'm just so grateful for the work that you're doing. I was at the Housing Advisory Committee meeting, so I don't have any questions. I really just wanted to put that out and be very grateful. And I'm hoping that, and I did ask this, but I want to make it public, that I'm hoping that you will work with some of the other nonprofits in the community to help get some of the Broomfield prioritizing residents, and working with some of our partners to ensure that we can get people who were born here to kind of stay here.
Absolutely. We will certainly work with the local service providers and resources available, and we will also accept housing vouchers at this site. So
that is fantastic. So yeah, and just another idea, just to mention, not an idea, but what experience I had today. We have, many seniors who are being outpriced. So this is going to help a lot of our seniors. We also have people in the IDB community who some of the nonprofits are working with to ensure there's like equity. And it's just amazing how many people this has been impacting in such a positive way. So thank you. That's all out there.
Thank you. Any other board member questions, comments? Board member Green?
Certainly, thank you, and thank you for coming to Broomfield for sure. A couple questions regarding the airport and the noise. Will there be special notifications associated with that? I know it's outside the zone, but still the airport has made very clear that it's still going to be noisy.
yes, we will be signing an navigation easement on this property. We are also required to provide notice to our residents of the airport. And then additionally, we have already had a noise study completed by a acoustics engineer, if that's the right terminology. But we will be making some improvements to the construction of the building to accommodate the added noise in the area.
Perfect.
So that would be increased window acoustics, things like that.
Great. And then I think, and I might have read it wrong in the paperwork, is there a state requirement for noise?
Yes, a condition of receipt of any federal funds does require an environmental review, and there are noise requirements associated with that. And one of the potential sources of funding from Broomfield would be CDBG dollars, and that's a federal fund that would require an environmental review.
So what happens when the noise goes above that? Or how far away are we from the study you did that's current with our current airport noise and that regulation?
So I think that the loudest component of this site is actually not the airport, but potentially Wadsworth Parkway. And so the way we are constructing the building meets a certain DDA threshold. And so we're designing to a threshold below that.
Perfect. So in the future, if the air noise gets louder, hopefully not, but not something I'm wishing for by any means. Or Wadsworth, sometimes almost where you guys, we won't be with these units and we'll lose them after all of this.
No, we're designing to current standards.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And then on the sustainability, kudos to you guys for really setting the gold standard, affordability and sustainability. A lot of times people say you can't have affordability, affordable units be sustainable because of the price. So I really appreciate you guys making that gold standard, improving as it's grown. And then in regards to the $1 million investment, how many units will be for Broomfield?
So 158 of the 159 units will be restricted for affordability as part of a covenant related to the receipt of the $1 million loan from Broomfield. Is that
Well, I
What you're
thought
asking.
when you guys, it sounds like, looks like someone else had a comment. I think you might know where I'm going with this, where there is a state list and that state list it's the priority of the units versus Broomfield residents and their position on that list.
So Mayor Pro Tem and council member Broom, the answer to your question is we have to follow both because of the tax credits that they're getting and they have received the award of, as well as our contemplation of CDBG funds, any federal funds. We have to follow fair housing requirements as set by federal law. What that does allow us to do is do an affirmative marketing plan. And what that allows us to do is which Gorman is already committed to, is they will seek and try to encourage Broomfield residents, both those that are living here, but also one of the key things that we've been trying to focus on is people that are working here that can't live here. So both sides will be coming forward. So we can't require it specifically to be 100% Broomfield existing residents.
Sure.
But we can do everything in their power to encourage that and to go and do that marketing and then to go that step further. And that's what they're committed to do.
Yeah,
So
and I
we
guess
can't
we're looking
exclude-
at $1 million investment, so I want to make sure that we can still, with some of our residents that we're looking for solutions for.
And that's exactly what the purpose is, and that's
Okay.
exactly the strategy that we're deploying in this particular case, as well as other cases within the city as we go forward.
Perfect, thank you. And then I believe my question was already answered with a previous question, but I wanted to just make sure that this is for ADA and seniors, everything will be certified for that, so they could be used by any classification.
Yes, that's correct. We will be meeting ADA guidelines for this project and fair housing guidelines as well. For the non-ADA units, we will provide adaptable units so that they can be adapted for all needs.
Perfect, thank you. And again, I really appreciate you guys coming to Broomfield, and that's all I have, Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Lim?
Yes, I have gained some knowledge of the importance of the low income tax credits and how wonderful it is that you're able to purchase the land from Colorado and the timing involved in that. I did have a question though, I guess for staff. Was it of such an urgent nature that this come before the Broomfield Housing Authority instead of having this go through the Independent Housing Authority that's about to be set up? I guess that's the timing of my question.
Mayor Pro Tem, council members, Councilmember Lim, yes, part of it, as was pointed out by Lauren as she was making her presentation, is they need to be going to a state, for the state land board property, going to a closing at the end of this month. So we wanted to move forward. The other thing, if you recall from our October presentation around the Broomfield Housing Authority, what our commitment was as a city staff was we will continue to bring projects and make them keep going forward, not waiting for that housing authority to be formed. We know that it is, you are the housing authority, so we didn't want to miss a step and miss an opportunity at all. So this is the last item that we have planned to bring before council this year. There is one more project that we are moving forward and contemplating putting significant dollars into that will come before city council. It will not be a Broomfield Housing Authority support from the funding standpoint, like would be a special limited partnership. But after that, we're trying to move everything over to the Broomfield Housing Authority. But our commitment, as we made to council at that time, is we're not going to miss a step in this intervening period. We think that's in the best interest of the community, as you've expressed.
Okay. So the applicant requested in the resolution that we had passed, the provision was that we would waive 50% of the fees, and the applicant asked for 100% fee waiver. I guess my question is, was there any decisions on or thinking or decision making or review on the part of staff to ascertain if that 100% was reasonable based on the project? And would we anticipate that such projects would be asking for 100% fee waiver moving forward, that this is setting a precedent?
Mayor Pro Tem and City Council, I'll start the answer. Perhaps Jennifer would like to add something to it, but I would say that one of the things that we did is we began to see during these periods of time, because of both the supply chain shocks, as well as some run up in some of the construction materials, we saw from several of our projects an increase of 15% or more of material costs. So that's part of the reason they asked for the additional support for the fee waivers, as well as some of the other items. Secondly, in order to obtain the permanent affordability, which this project is bringing forward, which is something that very much council has expressed an interest in, at least that we've heard you express an interest in, we knew we had to go a little bit deeper on the subsidy. So what you'll see in every memo as we bring them forward, at least from the city staff, as we bring forward support for any project, is what that full accounting is of those fees. We did do an analysis. We worked with our development partner in this particular case, and that's how we came to that conclusion. And that's why we recommended the 1.8 in full subsidy. Some of it is deferred, or not deferred, but waived fees. And then we have the $1 million. I just would like to make a note on the $1 million, as I think you both noted, it is a repayable loan. And that's in order to avoid certain tax implications and other events for them. It was proposed that it might be a cash flow, but we decided to go to a permanent set number of the repayment with a deferral period in order to further get that outcome that we're looking for, which is the high degree of affordability, the income averaging at 60%, and the long-term, permanent affordability. City Manager Hoffman, I don't know if you want to add anything.
I'm just going to say some of the other council comments about having the competing interests between whether it be sustainability or affordable housing, and if it sets a precedence. It depends on who you ask. Most people would say, yeah, we sure hope it sets a precedence. It's only going to become more expensive to develop in Broomfield. Broomfield is expensive. We do not have a lot of land left, and in order to fulfill the needs of the residents on the affordable housing, those subsidies will continue to be on the table, and I would suspect over the next 2 to 5 years, those subsidies will only increase. Because demand isn't going anywhere. Cost with regards to all of the operational components and constructions isn't going anywhere. So again, does it set a precedence? Yes. Is it going to continue to be very expensive? Yes. And that's why you want to choose wisely who you're going to go to the dance with. And we're thrilled that Gorman chose us. And we continue to choose them. It's a highly complex financial arrangement. So we certainly appreciate the questions, Councilmember Lim, and I can tell you just from looking at Director Romine and Ms. Bertonzetti that these conversations start early, and there's probably, I'd say, over 3 dozen before it even reaches this point with regards to the complexity of the financing and the components that are involved.
And if I could just conclude, when you calculate it out, it's roughly $12,000 per unit of subsidy, and that's for the 1, 2, and 3 bedroom units on average. And so to some degree, when I've in previous work at different times, I've looked at what other communities have put in to encourage affordable housing. Obviously, the really strong East Coast communities, New York and Boston, they're going to be in $75,000 to $100,000 per unit subsidy. But here in the metro area, it tends to be in the $25,000 to $50,000 subsidy, depending on affordability and permanency and things like that. So for the $12,000 per unit, I think is a very strong value proposition for us.
Okay, thank you. I have one more question on sustainability. So meeting the national green building standard at the bronze level is of course wonderful. As my fellow council members have pointed out, we were looking for the affordability and sustainability priorities to be met in the same development. So that's wonderful. Our conversation in ACES lately has been around bringing recommendations forward to council in February, but also the projects that are coming before us, are they going to be ready for building electrification? in the future. So I don't think National Green Building Standard at the bronze level is at that level with its infrastructure. And it doesn't state the building will be at that level. But if anything that can be done for a building to be ready in the future for all the appliances, all the HVAC systems to be electric is certainly going to be easier now than down the road to retrofit. Can the applicant address that?
Yeah, Nate Stark, Gorman and Company, architect of record on the project, 1060 Bannock, Suite 305, in Colorado. So this building is designed full electric, so we don't have any gas components to it. Except for the hot water, excuse me. So we're prepared for that electrification at that time.
Great, thank you.
We have other projects too that are fully electric, so we'll deal with it.
Okay, that's great, thank you. Any other board member Larman?
Thank you. So that actually, that last exchange prompts a question in my mind. Did I understand correctly that the heat will be electric?
Excuse me. So the hot water system, we have a centralized boiler for all the hot water.
Oh,
So
okay.
heat will be through electric, PTAC, package terminal heat pumps, and central DX split systems for the common corridors, common spaces, things like that. In the time that electrification is needed, we could swap that boiler out with an electrical boiler. There's a little bit of infrastructure work to do that, but it's something we're looking at on other projects and pricing out currently. And with technology, those systems are getting more efficient. So
Okay, so you just used a lot of words, and I understood some of them. So what I'm trying to get at is, how much is it going to cost these residents to heat their units? Is it going to be more or less than if it was some sort of a more conventional gas building today, when it's constructed?
Lauren Chevitz with Gorman and Company. So as Nate mentioned, our hot water system is a natural gas system, but the heating and cooling is electric, and cooking is electric on this property. The way that I don't have the exact amount that will cost our residents, but the way that utilities work on these low-income housing tax credit projects is that the maximum payment for the resident is set. So if we want the residents to be paying for utilities directly, then we have to give them a utility allowance. And that's set actually by the local housing authority or the state of Colorado. And so if the landlord is paying directly for utilities, then we can charge our max rent. Hopefully that makes sense to you, but there is a utility allowance that's provided for the residents.
Yeah, well, again, you used an awful lot of words and I understood some of it. So what I'm trying to get at is, will this building, as you currently have designed, be more or less costly to heat than if it were a more conventional building?
So the way that this building is designed is actually how we design all of our other buildings in the Denver metro area. So I would say it's normal cost for utilities.
Okay.
But the electric, heating, cooling, cooking, and natural gas hot water.
Okay, I'm just a little surprised at the electric heat. That doesn't seem particularly efficient to me in this. Whether or not it will be in the future, I don't know. I'm not that good at it, but electric heat to me seems complicated. But I appreciate the responses. It won't change my vote. I'm still in favor of this project for many reasons. I just didn't understand what I heard. So thank you very much for the explanation. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
One quick clarification. So the PTAC, which is the actual heating and cooling unit, works out of a heat pump. So it's more efficient than like what you would see with like an electric baseboard heat system. So that brings up the efficiency of it. So.
Thank you, I appreciate that, thank you.
Thank you. Board Member Shep?
Thank you, Mayor. So I appreciate this project coming forward. Well, I was going to save this for later, but thank you to the master developers for, helping to secure this development in Arista and Broomfield. So thanks for all the work that's gone on with staff and with the developers and with the Arista master developers to make this project come forward before us tonight. I see this project as both an investment as well as a benefit to Broomfield. My first question is, if this project were a standard market rate project, we would require the housing inclusionary ordinance, which would dedicate the 20% for rental. And I'm curious from staff if we looked at that option to say, if we were going to just accept that housing inclusionary ordinance, do we know what that fee would have been for if this was a market rate product? And if we don't know, I quickly calculated this.
Thank you, council member. I do not have that calculated, so if you have that right, that's amazing.
I don't know if it's right, but I quickly calculated it. So it looks like that if I did this all right, it would be about the fee would be about $994,250. So just under $1 million there. And that would be at that 20% for those different bedroom sizes. So when I look at this, that was kind of my first question. The next question would be, and maybe you can answer this, I can't answer this, which would be how much would it cost if we were to take that fee of $994,250? How many units could we actually build with that amount of money?
I think I'm going to ask Mr. Romine to help me with that one.
Excuse me, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, Councilmember Shep. I think that's always an interesting problem to figure out because we'd have to find that other location and therefore understand the land costs and other things. But that said, using a rough number, we would expect, as you point out, it's 159 units to be constructed, therefore the 20% would be 30 units. And I think you probably calculated about 25,000, which is what I would do off the top of my head. And that's where you get to about 800,000. We would expect that subsidy, in order to get that in another location, would probably net us probably somewhere between, we'll call it 25 to 40 units, and it would all depend. So what we're really gaining from this, of course, is the affordability, both in the 120 additional units roughly, but the second part of it, and I think this is also the key part, and that's what you've heard all of us talk about, the perpetual affordability. So if we were doing the cash in lieu and providing those in another location, likely whether it be through that method or the other, we only get 30 or 40 years of affordability, whereas this is going to give us perpetual affordability. So I think it's the two sides of it that answers your question best, to say the number of units as well as how long the affordability is. And those two things set it up for what the prices are. Does that help?
That helps a lot. Thank you so much. The other question is, when this came before council and our concept review, there was a nice picture, and it was again tonight with a mural on the side of the building. And I'm curious if that mural on the side of the building is going to come to fruition, or what could happen with that?
Thank you for bringing that up. Public art is one very important concept that we like to incorporate into a lot of our developments. Throughout the review of the concept and development with staff and with the Arista Architectural Review Committee, there was a desire to enhance the materials on the buildings. And we felt like it was worthwhile and maybe a better investment at this time to take the budget that we had for the public art and improve the materials for compatibility within the Arista neighborhood. That being said, if there are project savings and construction goes very well and we have money left over, we would love to add public art back into the project.
Okay, all right, thank you for that. And then my last question is regarding the Housing Authority being a partner on this project. what's the advantage of being a partner on this project, even at that 0.01%?
Mayor Pro Tem council members, that's a great question, and I apologize for not pointing that out earlier. So oftentimes what we've been talking about is the offsets against the costs of the construction, and then additionally with the additional loan would be. So we're really talking about construction side and development side. What that tax exemption allows for is its ongoing operational savings for the project, which helps drive down that affordability. So that's really what the gain is where it fits within the property tax structure. So therefore, the assessment rate would become zero effectively, not the rate, but the assessment value would go to zero. And therefore, that's the real subsidy in order to provide the long-term affordability for the individual units through that. So it's an operational support that will be coming forward through that Bloomfield Housing Authority Special Limited Partnership. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, thank you.
I'm trying not to make everybody into finance junkies, just give you enough.
Thanks. That's all I have, Mayor.
All right, thank you. Any other board member questions or comments? Excellent. There being no further comments, the public hearing is closed. First is the Broomfield Housing Authority's consideration of proposed resolution number 2021-60-HA. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution number 2021-6?
Oh, no.
Okay, got it. Sorry. Resolution number 2021-60-HA by title.
Resolution number 2021-60-HA, authorizing and approving an agreement with Gorman and Company LLC for admission of the Housing Authority as a participating member in the Crosswinds at Arista LLC multifamily project.
Is there a motion, board member Group?
Certainly, that resolution number 2021-60-HA be adopted.
Thank you. Is there a second? Board member Tessier?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Board member Shah?
Thank you, Mayor. So I saved this from the question standpoint, but looking at the benefits versus the investments, it seems like that the investments is relatively low as opposed to what the benefits are coming out of this project. So thank you so much for bringing this forward. Thank you for investing in our community with this project. I think that this is going to serve our community very well in the future. I hope that at some point we can make the mural happen, as I think that would be a great advantage to this project as well as the Arista development. So I intend to support this project tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Kuczynski,
Yes.
Lot Evans,
Yes.
Lim,
Yes.
Lindstedt,
Yes.
Shack,
Yes.
Tessier, Anderson,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Groom,
Yes.
Hinkle.
Yes.
That passes unanimously. Next is council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2021-184. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution number 2021-184 by title?
Resolution number 2021-184, authorizing and approving the Broomfield Urban Transit Village filing number 14, replat B, Lot 1, Urban Renewal Site Plan, Site Development Plan, and Improvement Agreement, Crosswinds at Arista.
Is there a motion, Councilmember Tessier?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I move that resolution. We can only do one at a time.
Yeah.
Okay. Resolution number 2021-184 be adopted.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Councilmember Groom. Thank you. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Lot Evans,
Yes.
Lim,
Yes.
Lindstedt,
Yes.
Shack,
Yes.
Tessier,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Groom,
Yes.
Hinkle,
Yes.
Kuczynski.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes unanimously. And next is council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2021-186. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution number 2021-186 by title?
Resolution number 2021-186, authorizing and approving a memorandum of understanding for an affordable rental housing program acknowledging the exemption of property taxes and waiving specific Broomfield development fees and use tax related to the Crosswinds at Arista Affordable Housing Project.
Is there a motion, Councilmember Tessier?
Mayor, I move that resolution number 2021-186 be adopted.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Groom?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? No. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Lim,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Shack,
Yes.
Tessier. Yes. Anderson,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Groom,
Yes.
Hinkle,
Yes.
Jaworski.
Yes.
Law Evans,
Yes.
Lynn, or I got Lynn, sorry.
Okay. Thank you. Well, that passes unanimously as well. Next is council's consideration of proposed resolution number 2021-192. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution number 2021-192 by title?
Resolution number 2021-192, authorizing a loan to Crosswinds at Arista LLC for the Crosswinds at Arista Affordable Housing Project.
Is there a motion? Councilmember Tessier?
Thank you. I move that resolution number 2021-192 be adopted.
Is there a second? Councilmember Groom?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Lindsay,
Yes.
Shack,
Yes.
Tessier,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Groom,
Yes.
Hinkle,
Yes.
Jaworski,
Yes.
Law Evans,
Yes.
Lynn.
Yes.
Thank you. That passes unanimously. The final portion for review this evening on these items is the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority consideration of proposed resolution number 2021-185-UR. Will the clerk please read proposed resolution number 2021-185-UR by title?
Resolution number 2021-185-UR, approving the Broomfield Urban Transit Village filing number 14, replat B, Lot 1, Urban Renewal Site Plan.
Thank you. Is there a motion, Councilmember Groom?
I move that resolution number 2021-185-UR be adopted.
Thank you. Is there a second? Councilmember Tessier?
Yes.
Second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, will the clerk please call the roll?
Shack,
Yes.
Tessier,
Yes.
Anderson,
Yes.
Cohen,
Yes.
Groom,
Yes.
Hinkle,
Yes.
Jaworski,
Yes.
Law Evans,
Yes.
Lynn,
Yes.
Lindsay.
Yes.
That passes unanimously. Congratulations and thank you so much. That was a marathon, huh? Seeing there is no further business before the Broomfield Housing Authority or the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority, the meetings are adjourned. We just reviewed a line item 11A, so we'll continue with our business agenda. Our next item under council business this evening is the public hearing and council consideration on second and final reading of proposed ordinance number 2166, amending chapter 2-52 of the Broomfield Municipal Code relating to library fines and penalties. I'll now declare the public hearing open. We will follow the city standard public hearing procedure as previously outlined. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor, and I am looking at Ms. Johnson. Based on second reading, she's going to do a very brief introduction and then field any additional questions that arose between first and second filing. Should be ready to wrap it up pretty quickly. Ms. Johnson.
Yes, thank you. Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, members of council, my name is Sarah Johnson. I supervise the Broomfield Children's Library. The Broomfield Library, with the full support of the Library Board, is proposing Ordinance 2166, which removes lost and damaged fees for all children's library materials and removes the $1 library card replacement fee. You can go to the next slide, please. All right. The Broomfield Library is actively building relationships with new audiences through community engagement with partners such as Broomfield Fish, The Refuge, Community Food Share, and Broomfield Elementary Schools. We are focusing our engagement in neighborhoods that have historically been underserved, including Village Square and Garden Center Apartments, Cimarron Village, and the Front Range Mobile Home Community. Through our work with these partners, it is evident that current library policies create a barrier and make it hard for kids and families to access our library. In early 2019, I was invited to do a class visit with first graders at Centennial Elementary School. I was really excited to visit these students. I knew some of them would already know about the library and visit us often, but I also knew that many of these kids may not have had the chance to visit a public library before, and they definitely did not know about the Broomfield Library, which is why the teacher had invited me to visit her class. The timing was perfect because we had just become a fine-free library. And when I explained to the kids that they would not be charged any money if they returned their books to the library late, one student raised their hand and asked, "Okay, but does the library cost money?" I truly wanted to say no, because getting a library card is free and returning books late is also free. However, I knew this wasn't their question. This student wanted to know if there would ever be a chance of getting charged money for using the library. I had to explain to the first grade class that if they lost or damaged a book or something else that they borrowed from the library, then they would get charged the amount for the item plus a fee for replacing it. After I explained this part of using the library, many of the students lost their enthusiasm for my visit. One of them even indicated that they would never ask their parents for a library card because they wouldn't want to risk getting fined for a lost or damaged item. I knew that my opportunity to build trust with them that day was gone. It was hard to recover, and my visit did not go as well as I thought it would. My eyes were open to the reality that while for many people in Broomfield, paying for a lost or damaged book does not have an impact on their family's finances. But for the kids who could have the most to gain from accessing library books and other services at the library, this risk is too great to take. Next slide, please. Represented in this graph is the total amount billed for lost and damaged children's materials and the total amount that gets paid back for lost and damaged children's materials compared to the library operating budgets for the years 2018, 2019, and 2020. As you can see, the amount billed for these items is a tiny percentage of the library budget. On average, lost and damaged children's materials make up just 0.15% of the operating budget. Additionally, the cost of replacing lost and damaged children's materials is already factored into the library operating budget, so the library is able to replace books that are damaged due to typical use over time. In spring 2020, when the Broomfield Library was closed, I worked regularly at Broomfield Fish. Each day I saw library patrons, people I have known for years, getting their groceries at Fish. I reflected back on my experience at Centennial Elementary School in 2019. The pandemic has only emphasized the need to make library services in Broomfield more equitable, not just for potential library patrons, but also for those who currently access our services. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you so much. We'll now proceed with public comments. Does any member of the public have any comments on this agenda item? I'm not seeing online. Questions from City Council are next. Members should limit themselves to questions during this portion. The time to introduce amendments and state positions for or against this item is later. Are there any questions from Council? Councilmember Tessier.
One quick question with regard to visiting the schools or different areas. Do you have a mobile truck that will go out? Because if sometimes like $1 for a replacement card is too much, maybe just a drive to the library may be too much. And I didn't know if you had any.
Yeah. So you're asking if we have mobile circulation services. We are just at the very beginning of being able to offer that. During part of the year, we have the use of a city vehicle that we use as an outreach van. And right now we are test running the circulation services at Village Square Apartments. So we do offer limited off-site circulation services.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for bringing this forward. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, and I want to ask you a couple of questions, but first I want to say I very much appreciate the intent of this program, and I do intend to vote for it, but I have a couple kind of procedural questions, I guess. And I want to also note that I have 5 kids, and we have lost over time many books, and it hurts to pay for that that replacement cost, and I can definitely see how like it could really hurt on a family that's that just can't afford that. So here's a couple of questions just to make sure we're not missing anything. So with the removal of the damage and loss fees, what is the process once an item has been reported lost or damaged or 3 days overdue? For example, does that item stay on the patient's account and subsequently limit the number of items that can be checked out by the individual, or is it like just removed? Or how does that work?
I think Danny, our circulation supervisor, will be able to respond to that better than me.
Thank you.
Hello. Yeah, once an item goes overdue, we notify the patron 3 times, generally 2 weeks apart of 2 weeks overdue, 4 weeks overdue, 6 weeks overdue. Once an item is about 6 weeks to 8 weeks overdue, that's after the final overdue. We have a auto renewal policy. So let's say all the items auto renewed twice. When we get to that final point, we do send a notification out of basically a bill saying we'd like this returned within 30 days. We do booking for payment. The amount of the item is included plus a $5 processing fee per item. At that point, the card is blocked. If the fee is over $10, which 99% of what we would bill for at the library would go over $10. And patron can come in and pay a portion, pay down, depending on how large the fee is. It's not always possible to pay it all at one time, but we do work with patrons. But when fees are significant, it could take quite a bit of time to get the account to the point where it's completely unblocked. Does that answer the question?
Okay, so in this case, it's a children's item,
right?
And under the new changes, there would not be a fee associated with that item, so that would be forgiven.
Correct.
So then, in this case, when that item has, from the library's perspective, that item is gone. It's not going to be coming back. So for that patron, would that item then, it would just be removed from their card, or would it show that they have lost something indefinitely?
That's a good question.
I guess it's going to work through. And then I guess the ultimate question here, and this is what we don't want to happen, is for any patron to think, well, I just don't need to return my item. So if you had a habitual thing, no, there's no lost fee for damage or lost items, I'm just not going to return these. And how would we prevent that from, I'm going to just like trust that everybody's just going to return their items, but if it did happen, would that just be a case-by-case basis?
Sure, we do have a couple, and it's really just a few patrons who have run up quite a large outstanding balance. It's generally not on children's materials, but if we wanted to keep track of the fees that we have forgiven on any given patron, we could do that just by making a process of the item being billed and automatically waived, and that does keep a record in every patron's account of what has been all the fees that have accumulated and whether they've been waived or paid in the past. But everything is there and can be accessed if we wanted to go back to it, if we were concerned.
Okay. I think Catherine might have that.
I just might want to clarify, if this passes tonight, what will happen is it will, we will do those reminders of please return these items, but when it would get to the point of being billed for children, if it was our children's material, then we would not bill it, it would come off at that point.
Okay.
If that, I think that's what you were getting at.
Yeah, I think, and that would be, I think the ultimate question was, just so this is not misconstrued, like that, this is not not meant to be like, you could be a habitual type thing. It's a true, like, I lost an item and any precautionary measure in place so that that didn't become like habitual process, I guess was what I was getting at.
Catherine, if I may just real quickly, Councilmember Anderson, through all of the discussions with the library and monitoring, we're confident that this policy is not going to lead to anything other than increased traffic for those. Again, you're going to have the one-offs, but we always think about never seldom, right? And so if it fits in a never seldom category, we don't set policies based on that never seldom. It's just too much time, effort, and energy. Seldom, sometimes we'll pay attention to it. Sometimes frequently, that's that sweet spot because you don't want it to go beyond kind of that consistent. So we'll continue to keep our eye on it, but all indications are historically from all of the times that we've been collecting fees and fines and updates, there isn't any indication that approving this policy would lead to anything other than a positive.
Okay, thank you. And then that would be, we would just address that in the future if it really became a problem. Okay, that is helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Broome?
Yeah, I guess, I might be on the opposite end of the spectrum than, some of the rest of us in the room, where I do feel like there should be consequences. And I realize that, the fees can be lowered, like for instance, when you buy something used, if you're gonna buy a used book, you might only pay 20% of the original value and they're paying, a fee and a replacement fee on top of that. But I remember checking out, I love going to the library, and when I was a kid, I used to love doing it. But I took special care of those books because I knew what it would be if something happened to them. So I'm not really for removing those fees. However, I do realize that there is a collection agency that you pay a fee to, that you would remove that service altogether because you don't have this, or do you still have to pay for that agency fee?
That is a good question, Councilmember Broome. This is Kathleen Lineup, Director of Library Services and Cultural Affairs, and it's the recommendation from Library Board that we do not use collections anymore for any materials, adult or children's. So the way that would work is we would stop paying them, and we would not send anybody to collections, but for adult and teen materials, we would still have the block at $30 until they can get their bill under $30. They would not be able to continue using library services. So it would just be for children's materials that we would not collect bills or fees.
So again, I'm against that. I think that children at any age need to understand that there's behavioral consequences. And I was just talking earlier, does the fee change behavior? And I'm not quite sure the late fees do, because the late fees are more associated with parents' responsibility than the kids. But taking care of the books is something the kids need to understand, that that's part of using any facility, not just the library. So I appreciate it. I intend to still approve this because I truly appreciate it. You guys know the community, you know the effects. I want more people to be in there, but I would love to understand how we can incorporate a consequence at any age if a book is not taken care of. And I think that's really special and a way we can give back to kids in the community, is hold them responsible. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Shara?
Thank you, Mayor. So I just wanted to clarify. So this is just for children's materials, and I saw a head nod. So I just want to give them my second question. This would just be for Broomfield materials.
Yeah, that is correct. It would be Broomfield Library materials only, and it would be only children's materials in our collection.
Okay, and we are a part of the Flatirons Library Consortium. Have any of those other libraries instituted this policy?
No, but they're very curious to see what happens. And I would imagine, be looking at their own policies.
Okay.
I just wanted to, just to add to what Sarah just said, no one else in Flatirons has an official policy where they don't go after missing or damaged materials, but they're much, much less. They are much less harsh about what they consider damaged, especially for children's materials. So they spend much less time and consequently a lot less money going after damaged and lost materials than we do percentage-wise here in Brookfield.
Okay, and then, I mean, you know, my kids do take care of their books. Sometimes they're late, but that's on my kids. So, what if, I'm curious if a children's material was damaged or lost, could the youth still either cover that cost or parents cover that cost if they wanted to do that?
It's the recommendation with our late fines, when those got waived, if people still wanted to pay fines for their late materials, that the donation would go to the Broomfield Library Friends Foundation. So we wouldn't collect the money at the library, but if people wanted to donate money to the library, then it would go through the Broomfield Library Friends Foundation.
Okay, perfect. All right, thank you so much. That's all I can add.
Thank you, Councilmember Lindsay.
Thank you, Mayor. I was not going to say anything, so I'm trying to save us time tonight, but as I was sitting here thinking and reading the discussion and I was reading the ordinance one more time, I just noticed under the other subsections and under A, B, and C for non-children's materials, of course, with all these super specific dollar amounts, I just think it's kind of strange that these are in statute, in ordinance. Do we need to clean these up at some point and maybe leave these to the discretion of staff? Are these antiquated? They seem like they've been here a really long time and they're really specific numbers. I was just curious.
I have wondered the same thing. Yeah, they've been in the ordinance since the library was formed. And they are mostly consistent with the other FLC libraries. But I do think if it would be the council's will that having that be in the province of the library board and library director, rather than having to come forward to you all, would make a lot more sense.
I appreciate the answer, and I know we're on second reading, and it's probably not the right time to do that tonight, but I think that would be a great idea, because this is very strange in cities in ordinance like this. So that's my only comment. It just came to me while I was sitting here listening to the discussion. So thank you.
Councilmember Lindsay, we have, and that's why I look over at Catherine and kind of giggle a little bit, not just Catherine and I, but just across the board. I would say we probably have 2,000 that are low-hanging fruit in our ordinances that require cleanup. And that's probably, that's been pretty gracious on that number.
Well, if I was working in the library, this would drive me crazy to have to here to change, $5 processing fees or whatever in the ordinance. So I just wanted to ask. So thank you.
Thank you. Any other councilmember questions? Councilmember Cohen.
I'll just note that Councilmember Winstead thought this meeting would have ended at a certain time, so he's trying to be brief. I did it while you were here. I did want to ask about Mobile, because part of my ignorance, I was surprised you don't have one. Anything has a rather robust one. Jefferson County has many. So I'm just curious, is it a budgetary or you haven't seen the demand for it? Because I can think of many communities where this would certainly be a benefit.
It is something that we've talked about for a while now, and we have some ideas around remote services like that that we'll be looking at along with the renovation and the possibility of a second branch at some point down the road. I think the reason that we haven't historically had one is because we are smaller than some communities like Jefferson County, but it is something we've looked at, and we're trying to figure out how best to do, because the staffing for those things and having a separate collection can make it more pricey, but it is definitely something we're looking at.
All right, thank you. And I'll just say to Councilmember Lindsted, well, it's fun to talk about book fines. I'm amazed we're voting on it. So hopefully we can move in that direction.
Thank you. Any other council member questions? Well, I think this is wonderful. We should probably work on that cleanup of the ordinance soon then. And thank you. Thank you all so much for proposing this. There being no further comments, the public hearing is closed. Next is council's consideration of proposed ordinance number 2166. Will the clerk please read proposed ordinance number 2166 by title?
Ordinance number 2166, amending chapter 2-52 of the Broomfield Municipal Code relating to library fines and penalties.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Councilmember Lindsay?
I can do it. I move that ordinance number 2166 be adopted on second and final reading in order to publish by title.
Is there a second, Councilmember Tessier?
Yes, there is. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Excellent. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Tessier?
Yes.
Anderson?
Yes.
Cohen?
Yes.
Broom?
Yes.
Hinkle?
Yes.
Jezerski?
Yes.
Lot Evans?
Yes.
Lamb?
Yes.
Lindsay?
Yes.
Schaff?
Yes.
Excellent. That passes unanimously. Thank you all very much. Well, seeing as it's 8:07, we're going to take our 10-minute break, and we'll reconvene at 8:17. Thank you.
The Access Live event is in music hold. Music hold ended.
I know, yeah.
All right, everyone, welcome back. Our next item under council business this evening is the third quarter executive summary of the oil and gas and air quality monitoring program for 2021. Council has a copy of the agenda memorandum, which I'll ask our staff to summarize.
Thank you, Mayor. Andrew Valdez, Acting Director of Strategic Initiatives, is going to introduce us to this item and walk through. As you see, the public in the audience, as well as Dr. Weisner, to field any additional questions. Mr. Valdez.
Thank you, Manager Hoffman. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. So I will be giving a brief update on highlights and focus areas for the various oil and gas programs for Q3 2021. Just as a reminder, this is a follow-up and kind of high-level summary to a public meeting that was held last week, Wednesday, November 3rd. Next slide, Jake. All right, so starting with our inspections program, our inspectors are the eyes and ears of the department. They observe and report field information and ensure compliance with our operator agreement and Broomfield Municipal Code. As I think you're all aware, we've expanded coverage to 7 days a week with the increased operations. Quarterly inspections revealed one finding, compromised storage tank at the Shannon Roberts well site in northern Broomfield. This is an orphan well, and COGCC was notified and has drained the tank so far. There's some residual remedial actions to be completed by the end of this calendar year. Our team performed comprehensive drilling inspections at the Northwest B and United pads before downhole activity commenced at those pads. And we were able to reach site closure and final status on the Davis and Carlson websites, well sites. So certainly some good news there. Next slide. Right, so gas testing. So as a reminder, this program is to detect and identify subsurface methane from plugged and abandoned wells that could pose ignition risk in occupied structures. We brought the magnetometer survey effort in-house. Just to remind everyone, we frequently need better location data before we perform the soil gas testing. So as of now, we have located 20 wells with precise locations, and that's helped us identify 6 wells actually in Anthem
that need to be retested for soil gas. So we've let our consultants know about that and have them go ahead and proceed with those retests. That means we have about 90 remaining to locate in Broomfield, and our goal is to have at least 50% of those complete by mid next year, hopefully sooner. And I think we can get at least 10 more done by the end of this calendar year. Until we have more locates, progress is sort of status quo on the soil gas, where we have tested 46 wells at least once. But again, we want to get the magnetometer locates kind of in place before we go gangbusters on all the soil gas testing. ERO is, however, testing the Carlson 1-24 well site in the very near future. If they haven't done it already, Kristen Pritz is not here, but this is pursuant to the Markle property acquisition by Open Space. All right, next slide. Air quality monitoring. So this program is not an enforcement tool. It serves to characterize air quality events from oil and gas operations, helps us understand oil and gas impacts on local and regional air quality, and it provides data and information to policymakers and the public. Extensive presentations were given by our consultants, Boulder Air and Ajax Analytics with CSU at the November 3rd meeting, and quarterly reports have been published to our oil and gas website. However, some brief highlights. Resumed drilling at the end of September contributed to an increase in volatile organic compounds at air quality monitoring sites near the Northwest Parkway pads. Significant, though short duration plumes were observed, similar to air quality events characterized during pre-production activities. Elevated levels of key VOCs at the North Pecos monitoring station were observed to be transported from the direction of the Northwest B pad during active drilling. And the regional ozone season was characterized by more exceedances of the national air quality standard in 2021 than in 2020. Dr. Detlev Helmig from Boulder Air is here to answer questions, and Brent Buck from Ajax Analytics is also on the line should we have any questions about air quality. All right, noise monitoring. So we recently resurrected this program that serves to collect data to ensure compliance with the noise thresholds in our operator agreement. Broomfield's consultant has provided equipment and analysis, and should we get their expert testimony, should exceedances of the operator agreement be observed. We've deployed 6 sound monitoring stations to monitor activity around active operations. And to date, we have issued 3 notices of suspected violation of the operator agreement, and we'll continue to review that data for additional exceedances. We monitor that data on a daily basis, and we'll continue to work with our city attorney's office on compliance action. All right, next slide. And finally, on policy and rulemaking, Broomfield is an active participant in the local government coalition in rulemaking, data collection, discussing BMPs, permits, and generally trying to speak with one voice on policy efforts at the local and state levels. I believe the city attorney's office has already provided an extensive update on these matters. So I don't want to spend a ton of time here, but the general focus areas for Q3 are on screen. I will mention that the local government coalition had a great conversation with the COGCC Commissioner Messner yesterday on financial assurances. And I think we certainly have philosophical alignment and a sympathetic ear with Commissioner Messner on some of our priorities locally. And finally, Broomfield, along with the town of Erie, will be meeting with the COGCC's permitting manager Monday next week to discuss the Coslet East pad, whose 2A application from Crestone is still in pending status. It's been determined to not be complete by the COGCC 3 times. And what we're pushing for here is for Crestone to plug and abandon all inactive or low producing wells in Broomfield. So we're trying to get that codified in an operator agreement. So now I'll turn this presentation over to Dr. Weisner for the public health update.
Thank you. Megan Weisner, Senior Environmental Epidemiologist, Public Health. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, and Council. I have a few slides to share with you, the public health update for the 3rd quarter of 2021. A small number of unique individuals, 15, reported health symptoms in Q3 during which time 60 wells in Broomfield were in the production phase. During Q3, Northwest Parkway B underwent drilling from the dates of September 14th through October 10th. And some trigger canister results showed chemical compositions consistent with this drilling activity. The majority of health concerns filed in Q3 were during the drilling phase at the Northwest Parkway. The number of reported symptoms in Q3 was 34, which was similar to the number of symptoms reported in Q2, which was 32, and Q1, again, 34. So the overall number of health concern forms submitted in Q3 was 15, and that remains low. The top 5 reported health symptoms are listed below, and you can see those include headaches, throat irritation, lack of energy or fatigue, eye irritation, and nasal irritation. Next slide, please. If you look up at the top left, you'll see a graph that shows you the health concern submission dates compared to the trigger canister dates by week. So if you take a close look, you'll see at the very end of Q3, right around mid-September, we had a larger number of health concerns that were filed, along with the larger number of trigger canisters that went off. And looking below on the graph to your right, you can see the reported headaches by week per unique individual and compared to trigger canister events. So what I'm showing here is the relationship between the top most reported health symptom and the number of trigger canister events. Most of these headaches were reported during drilling. I do want to caution you when you do look at this, although it does appear there is some type of relationship. This is a very small sample size with unique number of individuals. So it's not really possible to break this data down further and analyze it further with such a small number of unique individuals that filed. But I do want to say that this data helps inform future research, and it does help us as we look for patterns and trends in population health over time. Next slide, please. So how can we strengthen our understanding of health symptoms near oil and gas development? Well, the City and County of Broomfield, Department of Public Health and Environment, and the Colorado School of Public Health at the University of Colorado Denver Anschutz campus are working together to further understand health implications of living near oil and gas development. And in October 2021, a health survey was sent to approximately 1,600 households throughout Broomfield to help further inform this research and help us further understand health symptoms in various proximities to oil and gas development. And to read more about this study, you can visit the broomfieldvoice.com/oil and gas health survey. But many of you are very, very much aware of this. So that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wiseman. Next, we'll proceed with public comment. Does any member of the public have any comments on this item? My questions from City Council are next. Are there any questions from Council? Councilmember Lim?
I guess start with noise. On the noise monitoring, there's been some problems with both the uptime of the noise monitors and the display of the noise monitors. Can you give us a status on that? There are residents that are being awakened every night that would like some resolution to those problems.
Yeah, that's a good question. So our noise consultant's aware of the intermittency issues, and we've seen some stabilization over the system over the last about 5 days or so. There was a lot of data that was being updated because the monitors take noise clips when certain levels are exceeded, and some of those noise clips are very data heavy, so it uses a lot of energy of the monitors. So they're running out of juice a little bit too early. So we've been playing with that threshold a little bit, and I think we found kind of a sweet spot where we're still getting data from the noise clips, which we want as evidence, but we're seeing some stability overnight. As kind of a backstop to that, our consultant also installed just some backup meters. They're not displaying presently, on the dashboard because they don't have interface. But that data is being collected and looked at on a weekly basis. So even if our dashboard does go down and those noise monitors do go down, we will always have backup data.
Do we have the ability in any way to get the backup data in a public webpage or something that residents could see that?
Not on a webpage with the technology that they have out there, not with those systems, but we'll be happy to present all of that data, in a report kind of form.
Okay. What mitigations are still being discussed with extraction? We filed, as you said, we issued 3 notices to extraction. What mitigation efforts are still being discussed?
Right.
And what is generally characterized the reception of extraction?
Yeah, I mean, they would like to see noise levels go down just as much as we would, I think. I know they have a meeting tomorrow with their acoustical consultant to discuss closing of some of the apertures of the perimeter walls on A with some sort of like sheeting or curtaining batting. Obviously, these are active pads, so they need to figure out how these don't interfere with the truck activity and operations and things. But they are trying to think a little bit outside the box. Another thing that I suggested is, for some of the residents that are in that first or second row of homes, maybe some mitigations need to be, temporary mitigations need to be put in place, around the homes. And I've asked them to consider that as well. Beyond that, the $1 million question is, are they going to get there? And whether they do or not, I'm not sure, but we will continue to collect our evidence and make our case that they aren't if they're not. And that will be, handed off to the attorney's office for further action.
And in case any residents have lost track, what is the 30-day cure date deadline from the first violation, from the first notice?
Well, from the first notice, it was end of October.
Yeah.
But it's going to depend on what's remedied at which time because of how the violations are laid out. So for most of the notices, we're looking at the end of November. And if sufficient action isn't taken, then we go to the next step in the dispute resolution process.
Okay, thank you. Air quality monitoring, Dr. Helmig in our biweekly meeting said that but he feels that Boulder Air is only capturing about 3% of the spikes or air quality events that we're seeing. And I wondered if Mr. Buck is online, if he could estimate what percentage that CSU Ajax is seeing.
Jake, you able to?
Brett's on VRL. So Brett, can you hear it?
Hello, Council. Thank you for having me again. I presume you can hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. We have not done that calculation. In order for us to do that calculation, it's a factor of our total actual uptime coupled with the period of time that wind direction is pointing at one sensor or another. So it's kind of a calculation sensor by sensor, and then we'd have to add it all up. And that is a calculation we have not invested the time in doing yet. But it would be much more than 3% with our time resolution and spatial resolution.
Okay, thank you. In the CSU report, there was an October 7th event that we had not talked about at the biweekly meeting, which was particularly interesting because it was pointed to that it was it was the chemicals pointed to the Northwest beephead drilling exercises. And it also said that the benzene concentrations at Soaring Eagle were as high as 6 parts per billion, which is a distance away. And that both the PTRMS and Boulder Air caught those plumes. Do the scientists think that this plume that's a significant air quality event, an emissions problem with the benzene concentration, that was caught that far away near the Livingston pad, but originated from the Northwest pad, is that happening frequently? That those plumes are actually carrying across northern Broomfield?
Yeah, Brett, I don't know if you can speak to that.
Well, he got bumped back down to participant. They're moving him back up now in the queue. So one moment, please.
So we don't have, so what you're talking about is dispersion, and I think it's a good question because, you know, we would want to know how quickly these things do mix with ambient air, and how long does it take before they fully dissipate. We don't have a ton of data on this, but there was a recent event related to the drilling at Northwest B, where a resident also captured a canister in very, very close time proximity to an automatic trigger canister being captured. And there was significant dispersion. I would hesitate to put a number to it right now, but there was significant dispersion. I don't know if Dr. Helmig or Dr. Collette would want to speak a little bit further to what they may have noticed in other events, and specifically this event. But my sense is that might have been an outlier, and that it just kind of maintained its composition over a long period.
Can we move Mr. Buck back into the queue? He's on screen. Can we? There he is.
Okay, can you hear me now? I heard a beep.
Yeah,
So
he's back.
awesome. Thank you very much. This particular event on the 7th, October 7th, happened at 12 a.m., between 12 a.m. and 2 a.m. And a few the conditions were kind of just right for a plume to stay low to the ground and carry that distance. We had a cool night with a low kind of air mass that was sitting right down by the ground. So the real question is how often do we have those kind of conditions that would facilitate transport that distance into the community? And while we don't have the exact kind of percentage of time that we have conditions just like this, I think we could say it is somewhat anomalous that we would have a plume from drilling that was able to stay that low to the ground and carry through Broomfield. Now, infrequent or not, it was kind of a fantastic capture, being able to watch a large plume migrate across Broomfield that way. If it does happen, it will probably be later at night or potentially during colder spells as we move into the winter. But that's kind of all we can say about it. Is the conditions were perfect for that kind of thing. I wouldn't say it happens regularly, especially during the day. It wouldn't happen so much during the day.
Good evening, everybody. Yeah, if I can add a few things to that. We haven't looked specifically at that October 7th event because it's actually the Q4, which we haven't wrapped up yet. But I'm not surprised at all. We're actually having an event right now as we speak. We saw quite some elevated methane today at the North Pico site. What we're seeing here, what you're describing is what we've been seeing now for years at these different monitoring sites we are operating, so this is not surprising to us at all. And the general tendency we see here is that as we move towards the winter, these plumes become stronger, longer lasting. We see a higher buildup of concentrations, and that's simply driven by the change in meteorology as we're moving from the summer to the winter. The mixing of the lower atmosphere becomes weaker and weaker in the winter as the nights become longer, and the heating of the surface becomes weaker and weaker with the sun becoming weaker. We see that these emissions stay closer to the ground, and the mixing becomes weaker, and they can travel longer distances and for longer times and maintain the high concentration levels over longer distances. We have seen in Longmont that this can occur over distances of 1,000, 2,000, or 3,000 meters. So that's a couple miles. We've seen highly elevated levels there travel across the Union Reservoir. We know this has to be on the other side of the Union Reservoir, and if you draw a line that's a couple miles over. So it's not surprising to me to see plumes at Soaring Eagle, which is maybe a mile in this case distance. And these plumes follow the topography. So if you just look at the topo map, air just flows like water. You don't see it as easily with our eyes, but even a few tens or 100 feet of change in topography and valleys will promote the flow of air just down these drainage and valleys, following creeks and low elevation features in the landscape. So if you look at the sides and if you look what's actually downwind and downhill, those will likely be the areas that are subjected to the highest frequency and the highest level in these emissions we get from these sources.
Thank you. It'll be interesting from the health impact perspective then, if we see residents who are living further from the Northwest pad in the northern area of Broomfield suddenly have symptoms that they didn't think were going to be there because they were further from the Northwest pad. Okay, thank you. Those are my questions for now.
Thank you. Councilmember Anderson.
Thank you, that was quick. Okay, no, I tried to highlight the ones that Councilman Linden asked already. So, okay, so from public comments, Ms. Wanek had asked about the Code Red program, and just curious, I guess it's a question maybe for Ms. Huffman. Can Adams County residents sign up for our Code Red program and be notified? Or do we need to get back to maybe Chief Krieger? Or do we need to get back to them on that one?
Chief Krieger probably has the answer for that. Because Chief Krieger has the answer for most things.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Gary Krieger, Police Chief. You have to look at the purpose of Code Red, and this is a little outside of the purpose of Code Red. So on your normal landline phones, the answer is no, but I believe you can go in and register online through your cell phone. You will get alerts on your cell phone if you register. So like you can register to different areas if you need alerts from there, say you have a second home or something. So I think you can go ahead and do that. I have to double check, but I believe you can. Generally speaking, if we need to make a Code Red alert and we're on a border, we'll notify the other dispatch centers, in this case, it'd be Adams County, and have them use our alert to also go out into the circumference we're drawing as well.
Okay, thank you. And then this one is just a note, and I can submit this to the dashboard perhaps. But there was a fire at an extraction site in Loveland today where 3 separators caught on fire, and there have been a considerable number of questions about that and what was the root cause of it, which we don't know yet. But I think we definitely need to, and I'll submit that to the dashboard because I don't think we know what happened there today, and if that could happen at Livingston or one of these other sites as they go into production. And then on the magnetometer locates, I know we were working to get permission from residents, and this, I think David's not in the room. We had this discussion, maybe you have some information on this, Jennifer. We were looking at how do we gain access to locate those remaining wells, especially in the communities like Anthem and some of the more populated areas. And it was noted that these are actually on easements. So do we ever determine if we need to have consent or if we can just go locate? Or maybe Andrew knows that one. Or if we could actually get onto those properties without the consent just to locate them because it's on an easement.
I need it when we don't have the answers.
You were hiding.
I was sad. I know we talked about it.
We did talk about it, and there's a lot of different data for properties, and then also the status of the type of well we're trying to inspect. But go ahead.
Right, good evening, Mayor, City Council, David Allen, Assistant City County Manager, and Councilmember Anderson. Yes, what we've determined is that if there is a public access easement that goes along with the well, then we can go ahead and access that site. And I think the challenge that we have and what we've been finding with these wells is that where we think they are and where they're reported on COGCC's information is that they could be upwards of 60 feet off of those sites. And so what we run into potentially is that the actual well location may not be within that easement as well. So then we'd have to move over to the next property and actually get their permission to go onto their property to locate those. But in those instances where we have the easement that is within the property, then we can access that. We have the right to access that, and that's recorded on the plat maps.
Okay, thank you. So we're still making progress.
Yes.
It's a slow process.
Yes.
Okay, and do we know, and you might actually, and you might know the answer. This question is, as we're starting to better accurately locate these wells, are we finding that to be closer or further from homes than we thought they were? Or is it kind of mixed?
Yeah, case by case, unaware.
Okay, thank you. That's okay. I didn't expect you to answer that. Thank you. And then this is maybe a attorney question. As extraction, but now moving on to noise, as extraction moves from Northwest A to Northwest B with their fracking operations, and I'm not sure if we can analyze this tonight, and the same residents would likely be impacted by the noise. Is that going to be a continuation of the process we're already on, or does that reset the clock again? Like if we're already on this process of, we issued 3 potential exceedances of noise, move the equipment to the next site, are we still on that same timeline, or is that a new violation?
Councilmember Anderson, I'm going to reserve answering that question till when I can talk to council in executive session.
Thank you, that is fine. And then 2 more questions. For the air quality, actually 3. The Air Pollution Control District, which is a division of the CDPHE, approved extractions monitoring plan a while back. And then just curious, how many spikes has extraction recorded and subsequently notified the city of, exceedances of like any type of times the monitor has gone off showing air quality issues of any type?
Yeah, I think I can respond to
Okay,
that.
thank you.
So they're bound to report to the state kind of on a monthly lag. And the state is then going to share that data with us once they determine that the report is complete and final. So we haven't seen their first report yet. But I will say for the October 6th event where we saw a benzene-rich canister sample, we asked extraction to give us their data for air quality for that event, in and around that event, around the Northwest B pad. They have a different system than we do. Ours is much more sensitive than their system. So what they have is PID sensors, sort of similar to the APHIS sensors that measure in ppm total volatile organic compounds. And what we did see was elevated TVOCs. They're not speciated, but we did see elevated TVOCs. The other thing that they have are, I'm not super familiar with this technology, carbon benzene tubes, and this is a data capture process that's approved by the EPA. And if one of those ever sees a threshold of 5 ppm of benzene, of that one specific compound, that would sort of trigger, it wouldn't trigger an air canister the way we set up our system, but it would trigger a process whereby they would have to collect all of their data immediately, and instead of sending it to the state in 30-day lag, they would send it to the state immediately for analysis. So I asked if that threshold had ever been met since they stood up this program, and the answer was no.
Okay, that is very helpful. Thank you. We're learning more about air quality at the time. And then my last question here is, so the mobile moose was out from the state. I'm glad we identified what that white vehicle was. I think people were getting nervous, like, what is this white vehicle driving around?
We're gonna put stickers on it.
And we've been seeing in other communities too, I guess, not just here. And then, so do we, they did capture a spike, which, like, looking at our monitoring was probably a less significance, but did we ever get a response back from them of what they analyzed?
Yeah, so I reached out to the program managers, and in fact, I reached out to the person who was driving the moose at the time. They were still a little cagey about the data. I think it might have been one of the first times they were field testing the equipment, so they might not have a lot of confidence in the data at this point. But I'll reach back out to them and see if there's anything they can share. They did say that they saw a plume that was vertical in the air column, not a low to the ground one like we were talking about before. So they did confirm that. And again, I think this is interesting. This is an interesting development because reading between the lines, this means to me that the state might be looking at tighter regulations on emission sources like oil and gas. This technology, specific technology, is supposed to be calculating an emissions rate, and that's how the state issues air permits. So I think that's a positive development for all of us concerned about air toxics.
Okay, and thank you, and maybe in the future you get a little presentation from the CPHE on how that technology works.
Yeah, I'll learn about that.
That'd be good to see. Okay, thank you so much. That's all my questions.
All right, so thank you. I have a caller that called us just a little bit late, and I'm going to get to her before going to you, Councilmember Schaaf, if that's okay. It's Lizzie Lario. You have 3 minutes.
Great. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Lizzie Lario from the Wildgrass neighborhood. I apologize. I had a problem dialing in quickly enough, so thank you for taking my comment a little bit late. And I'm sorry I'm not at the meeting in person tonight because the air quality monitoring and what's happening in North Broomfield is very, very important. So I wanted to quickly touch upon one thing I heard. I appreciate Ms. Weisner's report and the information she's gathering and the time she's taking to gather this information. I do have an issue with the characterization of a low number of reports. This is, with all due respect, I'm trying to be proactive and helpful here. It's probably the 3rd or 4th time I've mentioned, and this holds true, I'm receiving more text messages, emails, and phone calls about complaints than the city of Broomfield. So something isn't jiving with the citizens that are having health impacts and the complaint line. I'm more than willing to try to figure it out. I'm not sure what it is, but it's hard as an impacted resident to hear that there's a low number of complaints when I know there are so many more that are not being filed. And I really think it's important that all of council and staff understand that what you're seeing in the presentation is not a reflection upon the reality of what's going on in my neighborhood and areas around me. I sent an email in earlier. The oil and gas meeting on Wednesday was very, very disturbing. If any council member has not listened to it, I urge them to listen to it. I sent in an email with 5 points that I walked away with that are very troubling. One, how often these spikes are occurring is alarming. How high the spikes have been, including several over health guidelines, one 13 times over health guidelines. How many spikes air quality monitoring is missing. The immediate and long-term impacts of being exposed to these carcinogenic chemicals, and the unknown health impacts of being exposed to these chemical cocktails. So this is what's happening up here. The reports might not reflect it, the complaints might not reflect it, but it is happening. So I'm here to help if there's any way I can. Thank you for taking my call, and thank you for everything you all are doing.
Thank you, Ms. Lario. We'll go on to Councilmember Stratt.
Thank you, Mayor. So we have a few questions. So starting off with the noise monitoring program. You had mentioned that the Extraction Incorporated, I guess that's what we're calling them now, I'm not quite sure. The staff has that they are looking at additional noise mitigation measures, such as sheeting or curtains there at the well sites. You had also mentioned that staff has suggested to Extraction that there should be additional mitigations near the residents. I just want to clarify this because I think I know where you're going with it, but I just want to clarify it. Are you suggesting that Extraction would be implementing those mitigation measures, or would the residents be implementing those mitigation measures?
Yeah, we wouldn't, this would be Extraction.
Okay, all right. Thank you for clarifying that. I figured that's where you were going, but I just wanted to make sure. And then the other piece along with noise mitigation was that you had said that the noise monitoring program has adjusted those thresholds. Can you give a little bit more information on what those thresholds are now? Are those sitting above the operator agreement, or kind of where are those thresholds now?
Yeah, so good question. They are above the operator agreement. And if you spend any time looking at the air quality data, you kind of see that it's spiky. So noise data is kind of the same way. And, you know, microphones crackle and pop and things, and we're not interested in that kind of noise. We're interested in like what's happening at this source, right? So the threshold had been set at 65 decibels dBA, and we set the threshold to 67.5, I believe. And we're still getting about, I think 50% of the sound clips that we were getting before. So it's still enough for us to, you know, listen to the clips and make sure it's not a helicopter, a bird or something like that. But we can still capture and then the sensors are then able to make it through the night without a solar recharge.
Great. Thanks for that additional information. Looking at the public health data, one of the questions that I had was the health symptoms that we're seeing, headaches. Is this on par with previous previous drilling operations that we've seen in terms of that health impacts that concerning headaches?
That's a really good question, Councilmember Schaaf. When drilling was going on at Livingston, our system started collecting health concern data November of 2019, and I believe that was at the very tail end, if not after drilling. So I don't have a comparison to the number of headaches during the drilling at Northwest versus another site in Broomfield.
Okay, all right. I was worried that was going to be the answer, but now we have the answer. Do we have any anecdotal information in terms of emails, in terms of phone calls from residents that suggest what the health impact data at that point could have been?
That was all before I began working for Broomfield. A lot of the data that I've seen that go back that far is very non-specific. I know there were health complaints that were filed through the state, but I don't have specific locations where people were in proximity to the Livingston pad during drilling. The data set isn't very well suited to do that type of analysis, so I would be a little bit cautious about trying to interpret that when I wasn't sort of overseeing that data set.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess we go on to the next operation level of this and see how that health data comparison at that point. Going back to the public comment that we heard about the health impacts reports that are being filed. What happens with those health impact reports? Is anything, do they basically just get logged, they get followed up on, and then what happens with them?
So what happens with, when somebody does file a health complaint, health concern, if they request a call back, I will give them a call within 48 hours to discuss any of their concerns. All of that data does go into a quarterly report, and it's something that we take a look at. I look at it every single day. I look at the activities that are going on at the CAD. I look at the wind direction, I look at the location from where they're reported. And the other thing that we do is we share this information with the state. So CDPHE has access to our data set, just like we have access to their data set. So I talk to the state regularly. I confide in them for, interpretation of some of this type of thing, and they do the same thing with us. So I feel there is a team of epidemiologists looking at this between me and Dr. Christy Richardson's team. So I keep them very much informed, and whenever we do see any air quality issues, I tell them. I get on the phone with them, I send them trigger canister reports and that type of thing. And quite honestly, nobody's doing this type of robust monitoring across the state. Nobody is, and the state tells me that all the time. And so I commend all of you for supporting the program, but I think that we're pioneering something. So we're always open to suggestions, but this data is helping to drive our understanding of health impacts near these operations.
Okay. I think that, when just after this operator agreement was approved, we heard residents that said, hey, we're just going to be guinea pigs with this. We're going to be the ones that are going to be, basically monitored and observed in terms of what's going to happen to us with this large scale operation that's going to happen in northern Broomfield. And I think that that's where the residents feel they are, is they're continuing just to be monitored and observed and how their health impacts, how it's impacting their health. And so, at the end of the day, what is going to change based upon these health reports that are filed?
Well, I think that, and I hear that comment a lot, and I completely sympathize and I understand with the residents' concern that they do feel like they're guinea pigs. I do want to say that a lot of other communities have been subject to oil and gas in their backyard, and I am I feel honored to be part of a program that is looking deeper into this data. And as far as the actions we can take, that's out of my wheelhouse. So I'm just helping to drive this understanding and drive this research forward and partner with, Dr. Lisa McKenzie and Dr. William Althouse at CU Denver to try and put our heads together constantly and see where we can go with this. I mean, science moves slow, unfortunately, but we want to do it right. And we're trying to mitigate these impacts from a health standpoint of saying, here's the data, here's what we know, and this can help inform policy. But that's when it kind of, that's when we have to step aside and say, this is for the policymakers now.
Okay. All right. Well, I appreciate the work that you are doing, both of you. And thanks for continuing to provide us great information and your continued work. So thank you.
Right, thank you. Councilmember Tessier?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I have one question. Thanks, everybody, for your questions. These are incredible. And Andrew, I just want to give a shout out. Thank you for your presence and for taking on the, I really appreciate it. This is for our epidemiologist. Is there a way, and so my question is from Ms. Lario's question, and is there a way to gather some of the research from her? If she's getting complaints, can we utilize that research somehow and it be like a bona fide way to capture that data?
That is a great question. I'm not prepared to answer that at this time. I have spoken with Ms. Lario. She's a wonderful resident. She's very engaging. She's been very helpful. I do want to say that we are working on a very large study right now, gathering health data from residents all across Broomfield. It is underway. this is happening, we're capturing health symptom data during drilling. And we're gonna be looking at, you know, what are symptoms in various proximities to oil and gas development during different phases. And so we will do different types of spatial modeling to understand these symptoms. And, you know, the headache reports that we saw in Q3, that's something that can help inform, okay, well, maybe in this larger study we're doing, that's something we need to pay attention to is headaches. And that might be one of those symptoms that, you know, we need to be alerted to and take a closer look at. So these smaller data sets that I have are really helping to inform larger data sets. And I do want to say that the data set we're collecting right now with Lisa McKenzie, this is going to be one of the largest data sets ever collected on an oil and gas study, if not the largest by the time we're done collecting this health data. So I do want to say that it is going to be a very robust study, and I hope the residents and can understand that. We're putting a lot of effort into it, but I'm always happy to speak with Ms. Laria.
Great, thank you. I appreciate that response. And I know that you're always trying to think of ways to keep the integrity of the data. And as you know, my novice brain in research, I just thought maybe there could be a way to continue to capture that from those who may not, because the data is super important. And yeah.
Councilmember Tessie, if I may, and so it's that difficult position to be when we have complaint exhaustion. And it's very hard for staff, Dr. McKenzie in particular, to say, please continue to individually, right? Because if they're all going to any one particular resident and there's 10 or 15, or they all go to Councilmember Lim, what that does is there's not an immediate gratification piece. And that's the tough part for staff, is because, you know, again, it's policy input. I wish you all could hear and participate on some of these calls and our level of frustration when we're talking to COGCC and when we're with CDPHE. It's very similar to, you know, what we hear from the residents, what that communication looks like. And it's hard for us to continue to say, you have to call in, you have to fill out the form, and again, from the residents' perspective, they say, I continue to do that and nothing happens. So why am I going to continue to do that? I don't have the answer for that.
So if I could draw a line real quick.
Please.
This is exactly what I'm going to have in my back pocket when I talk to the COGCC on Monday about the cause of the DSPAT. You know, this is the wins are there. Sometimes they're around the margins, and they're not enough for maybe any of us in this room. But that's how the progress is made. You know, and if I didn't have that data, or we didn't have such a robust, you know, collection process, then COGCC said, yeah, thanks for your comments. You know, we're not going to consider your additional requests. So that's what a win looks like.
It's just not, it's not a relief, right? It's a win in a policy setting, influence perspective, whether it's legislation or otherwise. But for our residents, to Councilmember Schaaf's perspective, that they continue to be guinea pigs, yes. And when we see these spikes and we go back to CDPHE, common sense you would think would prevail that something would occur, and it doesn't. So from the complaint perspective, it's the critical nature of continuing to gather those, even through the exhaustion.
Can I add just one thing? Please. I'd like to say that because of the conversations I've had with Ms. Lario, and she has told me how residents reach out to her a lot and they're tired of filing complaints, I know that the data set I'm looking at is larger. I realize that. I was on a call today with Dr. Lisa McKenzie, and I went through this third quarter report, and I told her, let's take a look at headaches when we start getting more data. And I said that because the residents tell me that the number of people filing is really low. And I know this because of this area, and I just want her to know that I do appreciate that. But I don't know when the headaches happen. I don't know how many happened. I don't know where they were. So I do have to add those disclaimers in because I'm a scientist, but the data sets are limited. And I'm not doing it to frustrate anyone. I'm just going to poke holes in my own data sets because that's what we do.
Thank you. We do have a caller that called in, so I'm gonna go to Kathy. Are you there?
I am. Hello.
Hello, we
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, I just kind of wanted to bring up that it's very difficult to hear about the unique individuals or the ones that are reporting health problems. Kind of don't know what that means. And should get more clarity on that. And then it was very, very, very hard to hear coming from public health that I thought would play a role in protecting health that were basically a research project, you know, to inform policy in the future. And I know people around me and, you know, see their kids and their animals, and we're kind of a lot more than a research project. And that was kind of pretty horrible to hear. The other thing is the citizen that submitted the trigger canister, the grab sample. It's my understanding that that wasn't dispersion you were capturing. And I think maybe Andrew should call and talk to that citizen or read her comments. What happened is she was outside, she smelled the hydrocarbons, and she immediately took a sample, but then she smelled even higher concentration of hydrocarbons. It smelled even worse, more concentrated. And she had already opened the valve on the grab sample, and so she didn't have a second one, and she couldn't take that sample. But everyone, you know, and this is more than one time that I've been hearing this, it thinks this is dispersion. And this was her just not capturing the peak of the sample because she wanted to make sure she got something, so she quickly opened that valve. But I think maybe Andrew should call her back and confirm that. And the other thing is, looks like Extraction's doing with their PIDs, they're measuring in the part per million concentrations, and a lot of the health standards, such as benzene, is in the part per billion concentrations. And I think some of you on council know that, but I wanted to bring that up. But I'm still pretty horrified, you know, hearing from public health, of people that should be protecting us, that we're a research project for future policy. And just, you know, just not sitting well. But thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
I can answer the unique number of individuals. I'll take that and say that when somebody files a health concern, they can file it multiple times in one day. They can file it several times over a period of a week. It's important to understand the unique number of individuals because people do file multiple times. There's different ways of looking at the data, and that's all I'm saying is if we have 50 health concerns filed, we want to make sure, because sometimes there will be, I think I looked at a data set one time and we have one person filed 16 times. So we just need to understand that. It's just one of the other ways that we can understand the data. And I want to thank you for your comments and just say that you guys matter to me, the residents matter. The purpose of the data collection is to gain more knowledge, to help protect health. And I don't want anyone to ever think that they are a research project because I am your advocate, I am on your side. And that's what I was hired at Broomfield to do, to help us understand this, and that's why I'm here. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wiseman. Any other first round comments before we go second round? Councilmember Cohen.
I just wanted to follow up on that point real quickly, because I know since I work with a lot of faculty, scientists can be very objective, and that sometimes misses the semantic effect that their words may come off as being diminishing when that wasn't the intent. So I'm sure that wasn't your intent, but I can understand citizens hearing or listening to how hard it is on staff and things are low or small, might feel like they're not being heard. But that term did catch my ear, so I was curious, not just on the semantic effect of saying small or low, but relative to what? Since we are a fairly unique study, what made you say that was low or not as high as you maybe anticipated or we should anticipate?
Councilmember Cohen, are you talking about the unique number of individuals that filed and that?
The reports that were low and small.
Sure. So when you do any type of spatial analysis, or you're looking at, I'm a GIS guru, I guess, I try to be anyway, where I look at things spatially and try to understand the relationship. You can really understand a lot about pollution when you start looking at it spatially and you run spatial models and that type of thing. You have to have a certain number of individuals in this case to have a robust data set to meet all the criteria to do any type of reliable analysis. So let's take the population of Broomfield, for example. It's about 80,000, give or take, right? Not everybody lives by oil and gas, but when we want to have a significant sample size, statistically significant, so we can run spatial analysis, we want to have, let's say, a 95% confidence level with a margin of error plus or minus 5%. People in politics understand this. When you do polls, there's a margin of error plus or minus 5 to 10%. If we were sampling all throughout Broomfield and we wanted a significant sample size, we would need at least 400 individuals to, report health symptoms to us. There's less individuals that live in a radius near oil and gas, but it would still need to be much larger than 10 to 15 individuals to understand the magnitude of the problem, or to even run I can't run a spatial analysis on a limited sample size. It wouldn't be a reliable result. And I thank you for letting me clarify that point.
Right, so for people who are listening, what you're talking about is if you submitted this for a peer study or review, they would say this is a small number just for statistical significance. But obviously for the citizens of Broomfield, any one report of headaches and ear bleeds and or nosebleeds, et cetera, are significant, but we just need to make that semantic distinction.
Thank you for helping me. Yes, it's significant that we're hearing these reports. This is serious. It is not a statistically significant sample size, which is a separate issue when you're running correlation analysis.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other council members? First time, then I'll go to council member Lynn.
I had a follow-up question on air quality events, and that's very recent air quality events. So we had done a lot of back and forth in our biweekly conversations about, could we have some kind of early warning system? The residents were told that the city could not provide, and then the scientists weighed into with this, we could not provide any kind of warning that the residents were looking for when is a time where I should think that if my child has asthma, that child should stay inside. That was the kind of thing they were looking for. We were looking for patterns to say, they're drilling at this depth. Is this when the benzene spikes occur, or when the toluene spikes are? And, on this day, then they're in this operation, we should warn people. So we said, no, we can't do that from both the city's perspective and the scientist's perspective. I understand that. But then I look at something like on November 5th, we had 5 triggers on United. Doesn't that establish something significant to say I'm looking for someone to piece together exactly what Operations Extraction is doing with the scientific air quality data to say this must be a time in which we're apt to see the event.
Okay, so we try to be responsive to this inquiry with our kind of bi-weekly extraction operations update, kind of what we saw in the last phase and what we're seeing now. And what we report out is kind of the news. We don't editorialize too much. One example of the challenge of what you're talking about is on Sunday night, there was an error. software error in the APIS system, we received 84 notifications and trigger canisters, right? So if we push that out to the public, they would think there's an emergency. So that's where our hesitation comes from, especially with, a system that doesn't exist anywhere, that's not tied to any regulatory threshold or guideline or anything else. Ajax has also implemented sort of a process tracker for the trigger canisters for when they go off immediately, what were the meteorological conditions at the time, and then what was the sensor reading at that time. That information is available and publicly discoverable, and I think we could, on the Broomfield side, make that connection maybe a little more explicit for some of the residents who want something like this. But again, it's not public health advice. It's not do this, do that. This is what happened. These are just the facts. And that may go some distance to address this question.
Okay, and Ajax and CSU were trying to speed up the process of analyzing the trigger canisters. Right now, we're still about a month behind on getting the analysis, and there are 20 outstanding trigger canisters. Does Ajax and CSU feel like the process that they were saying would improve the expediency of this analysis working? Do they feel it's working?
I know, Jake, is Brent still on the line?
Yes, he is. We can go to Mr. Buck.
I could say just, I ran a little bit of analysis on our end. When operations resumed, our workload has fivefold increased. So, it's not just them, it's us too. And, we're a pretty small department, couple staff members down. So it's a lot of data to process through on all levels of the organization, through our consultants and through, our site as well. But we are working as diligent as we can to get this stuff out.
We've got Mr. Buck.
Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Go ahead.
I'm also on, and I'll provide some perspective. We do try to run those trigger canisters as quickly as possible and get the analysis done. The process improvements that we put in place were largely for transparency and somewhat of automation, because every trigger canister ultimately takes about 5 to 8 hours of person time between collection, lab analysis, data analysis, and write-up. We're trying to shrink that down because we see the load of trigger canisters as Northwest Parkway kicked off. We immediately got backed up. So our first task was, how do we cut that 8 hours of time down to something less, while also providing as much data and transparency as we can through the process. Regarding the current backup, all I can really offer is we're working through it. We don't want to rush through it and give bad information. We'll be transparent, but we're not going to mark them complete until we know everything is correct. So I'm hoping that we can catch up as we refine our processes and find ways to cut that 8 hours down to 6, 5, 4. That'll help us get through it a little bit faster. But much like staff, this kind of influx just created a backlog, and we're finding our bottlenecks.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Any other council member questions? Well, thank you all for the update and for being with us this evening, Becca Helmick and Mr. Buck and Dr. Weisner and Mr. Valdez. Thank you all. And Mr. Allen. The city and county attorney's report is next. Ms. Rogers, do you have a report?
Thank you. No, I don't this evening.
Thank you. The city and county manager's report is next. Ms. Hoffman, do you have a report?
I do not.
Thank you. There is no legislative update this evening. Item 15A was reviewed earlier this evening, and the Broomfield Urban Renewal Authority was previously adjourned. There is no business before the Arista Local Improvement District Board of Directors, no special report, and no request for future action this evening. Concluding our agenda, is there any other business to come before the council? There being no further business, the meeting is adjourned. Earlier this evening, council approved the request for an executive session